Just 30 minutes ago, the polling stations closed and voting in the general election ended. In the course of the next 6 or 7 hours, and in the 13 or 14 hours after that, we're going to try to give you not only the story of the development of everything that's happened since voting finished, and the course of the election and its results, but individual results just as fast as they come in to us. Now, for that purpose, television is out in force tonight. Not only here in London, in the studio from which I'm talking now, but, as you can see if you look, all over Britain. You see behind me here this map. It has on it lights to show places to which we are going. London, up in the north, the Midlands, the west. This is our map and our indicator. At the sides there on the left you'll see names of some of the places that we hope with television during this night and tomorrow to visit. Glasgow, Lanark, Bristol, Cardiff, Cross Hens in Wales, Salford, Manchester. And on the other side, the same thing again, Edinburgh, Leeds and Birmingham, Watford, Wembley, party headquarters. In fact, we're going out and about just as much as we can. Now, that's just part of the story. There is also in London a pretty hefty organization which is poised now, ready to start. It has to be big because this is the sort of job that demands a great many backroom boys and girls. You might like to look at the big studio next door, which is full to the brim with backroom boys and girls. Very soon they'll be working hard because this is the place where the results actually come in. And from here, where they're filtered and sifted and prepared on special cards for us to show them to you, they come into this studio. And then in this studio, we have the job of presenting them to you and of keeping the wheels turning for a good many hours to come. Now, sitting with me here, he will be my constant companion tonight and tomorrow, is David Butler. David Butler is a man who's made a great study of general elections, has written an authoritative work on the 1951 general election, and is a don at Oxford. He best, I think, can introduce himself to you this evening.
Well, it's my job tonight to try and make the sense of the results for you, to do lightning calculations on the basis of the individual results as they come in, so that as soon as they're on the screen, if possible, we shall be able to tell you whether there's something significant about the change in the results since last time. But of course, I'm not really a lightning calculator myself. I can only do this with the aid of the people on my right, with Robin Farquharson here, and with this team of statisticians, all of them from Nuffield College, Oxford, where I teach, and they're all research students there, and they'll be with their slide rules doing their best to get the results sensibly to you as fast as possible.
And then further over on the left is sitting E.R. Thompson, whom we know as Teddy Thompson. I shall probably slip into calling him Teddy during the night. Teddy Thompson, who is the BBC's own parliamentary correspondent. He can tell you how he himself is very much concerned with what goes on inside the House of Commons.
Well, you've just seen the experts will soon be working at very high speed on the results of the voting. And I suppose the burning question for all of us now, and for some hours to come, will be who's winning the election. But of course, as the results come up on the screen, we shall also be witnessing the build-up of a new House of Commons. Well, it's my job to observe the House of Commons at close quarters from the gallery and the lobby. And I'm going to try to give you as much as I can of the parliamentary background, parties and personalities, as we go along.
Well, now those for the moment are our experts here. Now we've got, we think, in the region of half an hour or possibly 35 minutes before the first result comes in. There are 4 or 5 places who vie with each other to some degree to be first. We have outside broadcast units stationed at those towns. We hope thus to be able to take you right into the counting halls, and if we're lucky, to be right on the spot as the very first announcement is made of a result just as soon as they know that they've counted it correctly. Meanwhile, we think we might go outside now, away from the studio, and find out what people outside are thinking about prospects and the immediate future. And we thought we would start by going to party headquarters. First of all, to meet Lord Woolton, who is, of course, the chairman of the Conservative Party. Now, he is going to be interviewed by another of our experts on political affairs, by Robert Mackenzie. So, to meet them, Let us go now to Abbey House.
Here in the Conservative Party's own television studio is Lord Woolton, the chairman of the party organisation. Now, Lord Woolton, you again and again during the campaign warned your people of the dangers of apathy. Have you been discovering evidence of apathy in today's voting?
Dear me, not today. Most certainly not today. I've been round 10 constituencies in the London area today. I found the whole place bubbling with excitement, just like this central office is now, tonight. And I thought there was a little danger at one time when we heard all these Gallup polls that people might be taking it for granted. I think that apathy has all gone. And they've turned out today to vote. And by the way, I wonder whether you'd let me just do this, Mr. Mackenzie. We've had so many people who worked so hard for this election all throughout the country. Just let me take the opportunity of expressing my profound gratitude to them for all the work that they have done.
I suppose your main job here at party headquarters has been pouring out literature and sending out speakers and so on?
Well, let me see, what have we done? We've sent over 4 million leaflets out. They've all had to be counted one by one. We've arranged from here over 610 meetings, apart from the meetings that have been organized by the constituencies themselves. Not much apathy about that, was there?
Well, now tell me...
And they've been good meetings too, let me tell you.
This was going to be a television election, some people said, and that meetings would be of less importance. Do you think the decisive words were spoken on television?
Ah, very important words were spoken on television. But I do not believe that television decides election results. And Mr. Mackenzie, you're the author of a book and you know a great deal about this problem. I hope it won't, because surely the really important thing is the personal contact between the candidate and the electors. I think so far from the elector being the election being decided by television, it's being decided on the doorstep.
Well, there's one question I've got to ask you, Lord Woolton. Who do you think is going to win?
There was a very famous statesman who once said, wait and see. Wait and see, Mr. Mackenzie.
But now, how do you feel in your bones?
Oh, my bones are all right. Not a trace of rheumatism in them, not a trace.
And how are you going to spend election night?
Well, I'm going to stay here until 3 o'clock tomorrow morning, full of hope.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Lord Woolton.
I'm very much obliged to you, too.
I've been interviewing Lord Woolton from the Conservative Party headquarters. Back now to Richard Dimbleby in the studio.
And Robert Mackenzie himself will be back very soon with us here in the studio to add the weight of his opinion as one of our political experts. Now, for another point of view, to the Secretary of the Labour Party, Mr. Morgan Phillips. Now, he is at the Labour Party headquarters, and so we go now straight away to William Clark at Transport House.
Well, here we are in Transport House, and actually in this rather fine pillared room, which is the council chamber of the Trades Union Congress, where the trades union representatives meet and have their debates and make their decisions. But tonight I've brought from upstairs the General Secretary of the Labour Party, Mr. Morgan Phillips. Mr. Phillips, do you think you've managed to get out the poll today with a fairly fine day to help you?
Yes, I think we've got out the poll, but it hasn't been fine throughout the country. I've heard that it's been raining in Cheshire, it's been raining in some parts of the southwest region, but in spite of that, our reports are that the poll is very high. If it was maintained in the last hour, it may well be that our total poll will be greater than the last two general elections.
You don't think that there's anything much to the apathy that we've been hearing about?
No, I've never accepted the view that there was apathy. You see, some of the former election campaigns have been clouded, I think, by newspaper headlines and stunts, but I do recall the 1945 general election, which was equally quiet in many senses apart from newspaper headlines. And I felt that the people were thinking thoughtfully about the issues before them.
What do you think were the real issues before them now that the polls have closed and we can talk frankly?
Well, I think the issues that have been mainly discussed are the issues of the cost of living, of pensions and benefits, I believe fair shares as against a free-for-all, national service, shadow of war in the H-bomb era. And then, of course, we've had the usual scares. We've had the attempt by some people to make Mr. Bevan a bogeyman. And then we've had the attempt to create the rationing scare. I felt very sorry for Lord Woolton, you know, because it seems his own people, in order to try and get a scare against us, robbed him of the credit of his achievements as Minister of Food during the war, when he introduced rationing, indeed with our support. And now, when we started de-rationing, they seem to give us the responsibility and authority by for being the rationing party. I think Lord Woolton is entitled to the credit.
Well, now, just one last thing, though. Do you have any sort of prediction this early in the evening?
Well, we naturally make our own calculations, but the main thing, as far as we're concerned at the moment, is to see that we get more than 14 million votes. If we get that, we shall be happy. If we lose in a high poll, we shall accept the decision of the electorate and act as a vigorous and constructive opposition. I'm hopeful, however, that the high poll may well mean that we shall be called upon to form the government and carry out the pledges we made during the election.
Well, that's all the time for now. Thank you very much. And now I'm afraid we're going to have to leave here, but we'll be back into Transport House in the course of the evening. And now back to Richard Dimbleby in the studio.
And now, for our next call outside on party matters, to the Liberals. Mr. Harris, who is the General Director of the Liberal Party, will be talking to Brian Connell. So, we go now over to him at Bush House.
Mr. Harris, perhaps you'd care to tell us what reports you've been getting from your agents in the 110 constituencies where Liberal candidates are standing.
Well, we've been having the most encouraging reports. Of course, like everybody else, we've had reports of an extremely heavy poll. We think that is to our advantage in those areas where we have a Liberal candidate, because it means that Liberals are going to the poll. But perhaps the most interesting thing that's been happening during the course of the day at our headquarters are the dozens, the hundreds of people who've been ringing us up to say, we haven't got a Liberal candidate, we're only too sorry about that, how do you advise us to vote? And we've given them that advice, but I don't propose to tell you what advice we have given them.
Perhaps you care to tell me what constituencies you are in fact principally interested in?
Well, of course, we're interested in all constituencies because we do feel that at this election we have an opportunity of increasing the total Liberal poll. And therefore, we're interested in all results where Liberal candidates are standing. But we're particularly interested in those where we think we may make Liberal gains, such as Anglesey and Merioneth, Roxburgh, Selkirk, Inverness, North Cornwall and North Dorset. We're interested in a second group where we feel with some confidence we shall increase our vote in Totnes and in North Devon. And then there's a group of constituencies for which I have a peculiar affection, those where our young Liberals are standing. Richard Moore in Tavistock. He takes his final examination 3 days after polling day. Barbara Burwell in Bath, Roy Douglas in Bethnal Green, and Derek Murphy in Oldbury and Halesowen. And I shall watch with a great deal of pride and interest the results in those constituencies.
We've been hearing and seeing a lot of reports in the newspapers about relatively sparse attendances at the constituency meetings. Has that been your experience?
Not at all. If I could think that half the people who've been to Liberal meetings voted Liberal, I should be very confident indeed. We've got the most extraordinary reports of the most extraordinary meetings. We gather that last night, the eve of poll in Hereford, Mr. Frank Owen had a meeting indoors of over 900 and came out to a meeting of 1,000. Jeremy Thorpe, one of our young people in North Devon, had a meeting inside of 1,000 with a relay to people outside. Edwin Mallandine had a meeting of 1,500. And it's been our experience the whole of the campaign that people have come to our meetings. We've had very good meetings, very large meetings, and they've asked the most interesting questions, which I think we've been able to answer.
Well, that is all most encouraging, and we shall wait to see the result. And with those comments from Mr. H.F.P. Harris, the General Director of the Liberal Party, it is back to Richard Dimbleby in the studio.
Now, as I said, all over the country votes are now being counted. And as I said too, we have units waiting at the 5 very strategic points to bring us instantly the news the moment that a count is complete and a result is known. But we can now, without waiting for that, go out into the provinces to get some news of what is going on in those counting rooms. Let's go, first of all, west to Exeter. Over to Frank Gillard in Exeter.
Here at Exeter on this very wet evening, crowds are already gathering outside the Civic Hall for the declaration of the poll. And while the general public brave the rain and remain outside, we have the privilege, by special permission of the returning officer, to go right into the hall where the counting's going on. All of us here, by the way, have been sworn to secrecy before the justices of the peace, and you'll understand that we can't show close-ups of ballot papers. Well, here is the scene, as the votes of Exeter's 54,000 electors are counted by 60 official counters at 30 tables. The first ballot box was brought in at 9:10. The first job was to count the total of the votes cast, and now they're being sorted according to the voting. And there's a sound here, sound of the rustling paper like the falling of steady rain. Well, on each ballot paper there are two names, Les Merrion, the Labour candidate, and Dudley Williams, the Conservative candidate. I hope we'll get a glimpse of the two candidates in a moment. At the last general election, Mr. Williams, the Conservative, held Exeter for the Conservatives in a three-cornered contest by a majority of upwards of 4,000. Well, you see, there are four people at each table. Two of them are official counters. The other two, you can see one there with a favour in his buttonhole, the other two are party nominees, and they check the counting. And the sorted votes, as they sort them, they're made up into bundles of 50, and when enough of them are bundled up, they're taken to the top table. So far, we haven't reached that stage. And the final totals are added up on a comptometer. And then at the head of this long hall sits the returning officer, Mr. Newman, the town clerk of Exeter. He's there in the centre there. He's in command of the whole operation, and he has the two candidates there with him. And they're looking, I think Mr. Newman is probably looking at doubtful votes. I know that's the principal job he's got tonight, to decide whether a vote can be allowed or not. Well, now, that's the scene here inside the hall. Exeter hopes to declare early. Mr. Newman tries to be the first in the country, but you never can tell in this game. And we think that perhaps our hottest rivals in this friendly rivalry, to be first out with the result, may be the constituency of Salford West. So over now, from Exeter to Kenneth Wolstenholme at Salford.
And here at Salford is the balcony from which we expect the first result will be announced. And the crowd, which is just beginning to gather below, complete with banners, favours, rattles and bells, and all the paraphernalia of election day, is convinced that we haven't long to wait. They've already counted the total poll here, and so now they're sorting the votes into the candidates' polls. Well, the spectators are filling in the time, singing their party songs and shouting their party slogans, and the atmosphere is obviously electric. But inside, all is calm, with the pictures looking rather disapprovingly at the transformation of the Salford City Art Gallery into a counting chamber. And now we see some of the 200 counters who are counting the votes in Salford West, my own vote among them, by the way, while in an adjoining room another 200 are checking the Salford East votes. Both these constituencies are industrial ones, engineering and textile works, and of course the so-called Manchester docks are in Salford. In 1951, Labour won both seats by 6,778 in East and 3,487 in West. But in the recent municipal elections, the Conservatives gained 4 of the 16 seats, and so now have 12 out of the 64 councillors. Well, to get the 200 ballot boxes into the art gallery has been a work of superb organisation. 14 double-decker buses and 27 cars brought the counting clerks with their boxes from the polling booths, but because of building, which is in progress to the right of the gallery, the transport couldn't come right up to the door. So the clerks had to do a 100-yard sprint with their precious boxes. All the same, the first box was here at 9:03, and everyone is still convinced that the two Salford MPs will, as usual, be the first to be elected. So until we come back here for the declaration, let's go and see what's happening somewhere else. So let's go south to Bernard Slidell at Watford.
And here we are at the heart of Hertfordshire, so to speak, 17 miles northwest of London, in the town hall at Watford, a building created in 1940, where probably on most nights people would be dancing or watching a symphony concert. We're now at 14 tables, ringing the room, or ringing the hall rather. You can see the backs of the counting assistants who are counting the votes which are coming in from 49 polling stations, representing an electorate of 53,000 people. And on the other side, looking at them or watching them carefully, are the counting agents who are employed by the political parties to oversee the counting. And now towards the centre of the room, we can come in and see the mayor who is standing up there, the taller of the two gentlemen, the mayor of Watford, Alderman E.C. Amy, who is a surveyor who works for the London County Council. And on his right is the town clerk, who is the returning officer, Mr. Gordon Hall. He's a Yorkshireman. He likes living down south. And away to the right, we can see the Conservative candidate. We're coming up to him there with his hand in his pocket. Conservative candidate who is Mr. Fred Ferry Jones. He's a businessman and an aviation expert. Over on the left here, as we go over, we'll come to the Labour candidate, who is Mr. Ernest Ashley Bramall. And there he is, just taking his handkerchief out. Mr. Bramall, who is a barrister, whose wife, unfortunately, is ill. We hope she's watching this broadcast. Outside the town hall, the crowds are beginning to gather, and they're looking up expectantly at the balcony. And above the balcony, above the main entrance, you can see in a moment perhaps the crest of the Watford Borough with its inscription Audentior, which means more boldly. And now the people were certainly bold today. They went out in horse-drawn coaches to the polls in many cases, and I expect they're wondering what's going to happen, because last time it was a three-cornered fight in this constituency. There was a Liberal candidate with 2,000 votes to his credit, although the Labour man got him with a majority of 508. This time, there's, of course, only the Labour and Conservative candidate. What will happen, we don't know, but we shall be coming back a bit later. Now, for the meantime, we go over to James Pestridge at Cheltenham.
Well, here in Cheltenham, it's been a grey but mild day with a few spots of rain that haven't deterred the electorate of 51,500 from recording their votes in good number. Outside this Edwardian Town Hall in Imperial Square, a small crowd's already gathered, and 3/4 of an hour ago the first ballot boxes had arrived, and now the crowd's getting really warmed up indeed as they wait for the announcement of the result of this election. There are visitors here as well as residents to this garden spa on the edge of the Cotswolds. And I see that they're getting quite a lot of fun and games because the time is being passed from amusement by Hearty the clown, who's keeping them all in fits of laughter and a bit of singing, and there's one or two umbrellas up, but there's not very much rain coming down at the moment. Well, now, inside the town hall, there's a very different scene. As in all the other town halls, counting is going on, and at the tables here, the votes are now being sorted into the two candidates and being checked by the political agents on these long tables that look almost like table tennis tables. And up on the top of the hall, on the stage, we have the official onlookers, the friends and relations of the candidates and the party representatives and so on. And the votes themselves are being put on the two long tables we can see in front of the stage. That on the left is James Finnegan, the Labour candidate, and on the right is Major Hicks Beach, the Conservative candidate. And the votes are placed out there in piles of 100, and recorded by the recorders so that in due course they'll be able to total very quickly the number of votes that have been cast. At the centre table there's a returning officer, the Mayor, Lieutenant Colonel Biggs, who was just checking through with his acting returning officer, the town clerk, any spoiled papers or any doubtful papers at all. Well, it won't be long now. The ballot boxes have all been opened and checked, and in the meantime I think that we'll go over to Barclay Smith, who's with the Roving Eye in Wembley.
And here at the Wembley Town Hall, a hefty stone's throw from the football stadium, 2 counts and announcements of results will be made tonight. Wembley North, as you see, and later Wembley South. Both of these constituencies are largely residential, but they've both got considerable mixed industries in the areas. The position at the moment at the Wembley North count is that the content of the ballot boxes, they're being checked for total. When they're done, the papers are jumbled up in a mixer, and then they're handed to the counting assistants who sit on the inside of the table, that is on the right of that table, because the tables are laid in a great U around the room. They're handed to the counting assistants, and as they're checked into bundles of 50 for any particular candidate, so they go across to that central table. It's all green baize. They call it the Caterpillar here, and anyone present in the room can see, as the count is in progress, the state of any individual candidate. And at the far end you would see the number 30,000, which is something that any of those candidates there would dearly love to have in an hour or two's time. there the tall figure of the Conservative candidate, Mr. Bullis. He's been a Member of Parliament here since 1950, had a majority of about 8,000 last time. And to his right, in a very gay jumper, the new Liberal candidate to the right, if we could just go, the new Labour candidate, Mrs. Jane Phillips, a one-time secretary of Mr. Attlee. And again to the right, the shorter figure of the new Liberal candidate, Lady Abrahams. Well, that is the position at the moment here. It will be, we think, sometime after 11 o'clock. The last time it was 11:22 when the result was finally announced. So for the moment, it's goodbye from the Wembley Town Hall and back to Richard Dimbleby in the studio.
Well, now we've had one or two journeys out. Time has come for a much longer one to cross the border. We're not expecting any particularly early results from Scotland, but that is no reason why we shouldn't go over and find out what's doing up there. So we'll go up to Glasgow to hear from Esmond Wright. Over now from London to Glasgow.
Good evening to you. There are 71 constituencies in Scotland, but we won't be able to show you the result of 4 of them, indeed even when this programme is over tomorrow evening. Because as you can see by looking at the map, it's very difficult to bring the ballot boxes from, let's say, Mull, all the way round the Mull of Kintyre to Dunoon, where they're counted, or even overland to Oban. And the same difficulty holds of the Western Isles, of indeed this vast constituency of Inverness, the largest constituency in the British Isles, which includes Skye, and of course particularly of Orkney and Zetland, Orkney and Shetland as you perhaps know it, Orkney and Zetland the farthest constituency in the country. But we will show on our main grid of 71 constituencies, 7 we hope by tomorrow evening. Now we've divided the country up into 5 smaller sections. The Highlands and North of Scotland grid with 18 constituencies, which we shall shade in as the evening and tomorrow unfolds. The borders from Galloway across, of course, to Berwick and East Lothian on the east coast. And then the 3 grids for the central belt. Glasgow with its 15 constituencies, and then Edinburgh with its 7 constituencies, and then outside the 2 cities, the other 27 constituencies in the central belt in Scotland. You'll notice that there are 49 constituencies out of the 71 in this central Midland plain, the Forth Clyde Valley. In other words, 2/3 of the people of Scotland live in that area. Indeed, 1/3 of them live within 10 miles of Sauchiehall Street, Glasgow. Now, I'd like to make just 2 brief comments on this general strategic situation in Scotland. The first is this, that you may have an impression of Scotland as, let's say, a country of Willie Gallagher and Jimmy Maxton. You may think of it as Red Clydeside. In actual fact, Scotland is the most stable part of the United Kingdom politically. You may remember in 1945, 12%, there was a swing of 12% in the country as a whole to Labour. But in Scotland it was only 7%, and in Glasgow it was only 2.5%. Now, if one accepts that stability on the one hand, one has also to accept the importance of the marginal seats on the other. There are a lot of marginal seats, not only in Scotland as a whole, but particularly in Glasgow and a few in Edinburgh. And I would say, if you're keeping your eye on Reading, you might also keep it, let's say, on Rutherglen, or on Kelvingrove, or particularly, perhaps, on Scotstoun. Meanwhile, we shall be returning here to see the map tonight and tomorrow. Meanwhile, this is Esmond Wright in Glasgow. I'm putting you over now to Professor Brindley Thomas in Cardiff.
Well, here in Wales, out of a total of 36 constituencies, Labour held 27, Conservatives 6, and Liberals 3. By the way, it's been raining very hard here since 6 o'clock, and I'm sure that'll make some difference. Well, now, what are we going to be looking for? Well, there are first the 6 very marginal Labour seats. There's Anglesey and Merioneth in the north, Brecon and Radnor in mid Wales, and Pembroke and Swansea West in the south. The Conservatives are very marginal at Conway, and the Liberals at Carmarthen, where Sir Rhys Hopkins-Morris had a majority of only 467. Well, now, if there's a national swing, of course, Wales will go as well. But there are two cross currents here that you have to allow for. The Welsh Nationalist Party is fighting in 11 seats out of 36, and of course there's the influence of Lady Megan Lloyd-George. Lady Megan, in the last 2 years, has been campaigning vigorously for a Parliament for Wales and recently joined the Labour Party. Now, the Welsh Nationalists are very strong in certain parts, and a small swing towards them might make a big difference in a four-cornered seat. There are some observers who say that the influence of Lady Megan will be exactly cancelled out by the vigour of the Welsh Nationalists. Well, now, the earliest results will fortunately give us a clue. Carnarvon is expected early. It's a four-cornered fight, and we'll know something about the strength of the Nationalists and the Liberals there. And then, of course, down in the south, Labour has its big battalions. There were 9 seats there last time, with a majority of over 20,000. And an Iron Bevans result is expected fairly early, and we'll be able to compare the majorities now with those in 1951, and that will be a very interesting clue. Well, now back to Richard Dimbleby in the studio.
Now, to some extent, those who are at our various regional points commenting, as the commentary you heard a moment ago, and those who are in the counting halls are very much involved in the hurly-burly of this election as it goes on. And so, indeed, are we at this nerve centre in London. It might be a good idea, we thought, to include in our roundup of what's going on a more detached view of everything that's happening. So we propose to take you to 2 men who are sitting in the comparative seclusion of a room in Oxford, looking at a television screen just as you are. Those 2 men are both historians, Alan Bullock and Herbert Nicholas. And we're going to meet them in Herbert Nicholas's room in New College, Oxford, a room that looks out on the lovely gardens of the college. So, over now to Oxford.
Good evening. Here we are, as Richard Dimbleby says, far away from the hurly-burly and Herbert Nicholas's rooms in New College, Oxford, and here is Herbert Nicholas, who's going to be sitting up with us, looking at the election results together. Well, Herbert, what do you think we've got to look for in the election results? What's the first thing we've got to keep an eye out for?
Well, Alan, although we're so far away from the hurly-burly, the first thing I want to know is, of course, who's going to win.
Naturally.
Yes. But the second thing, which has been touched on already in this programme, is how are we going to explain this so-called quiet election?
Well, come on, you can say.
Sir Winston called the 1950 election demure. He coined the phrase for it. He said this was the most demure election he'd ever known, and he's a pretty good judge of elections in his time.
Yes.
Now, what is this due to? Will the result give us any clue?
Well, I should have thought what we've got to look for is a number of people voting, and if as a rather changed view, I thought, Lord Woolton and Mr. Morgan Phillips. Now, they were saying only a day or 2 ago this was danger of apathy. If, as they seem to suggest, it's been a heavy poll, then I think what we've got to say is, are we in fact getting elections which are no longer of the old type in which the vitality of the election was judged by the noise,
Yes.
but are we in fact getting elections which are quiet, but this quiet doesn't in any sense mean apathy?
It isn't only noise, though, is it? People have said that meetings have been much less. Attendance at meetings has been much smaller.
Well, if 4 million people have been watching television, presumably this is a big factor in the election.
Yes. This theory that they're sitting at home quietly making up their minds.
Well, a jolly good thing, too. I don't see why an election should be judged by the number of issues and scares which it provides for journalists.
No. On the other hand, isn't it a good idea for the public to get out and about and exchange views and question candidates?
But Herbert, you don't believe any more than I do that people make their minds up which way they're going to vote in a 3 weeks election campaign.
Quite true.
They make it up over a period of years.
Well, there are some people who make it up during an election
Ah,
campaign,
yes.
and they may settle the fate.
They may settle the fate, but the vast mass of the people in the country have made their minds up which way they're going to vote before the election campaign takes place.
quite
Isn't that true?
Yes.
I remember being in Germany in September 1953 and looking everywhere with a television camera to find an example of an incident or excitement, and there were none at all. We couldn't find anything, and yet that was one of the
That's a
highest
huge poll,
polls.
wasn't it?
Enormous.
Well, of course, in 50, which was this first very quiet election, there was a poll of 84%. In 51, 82.5%.
Yes.
So perhaps this one will be in the 80s or even the high 80s.
Well, we'd better wait and see what the proportion is.
Yeah.
I think the second thing I'm interested in looking for is the size of the majority which the winners secure, because it seems to be obvious that if you get sufficiently large majority, you are in a much better position to conduct the government of the country. Too small a majority can indeed hamper and cramp the whole business of administration and the management of the House of Commons. Of course, there's another point about that, and that is I think the size of the majority may have a considerable effect upon the character and policy of the parties themselves. For instance, to give you an example, it's been said by many people, I don't say whether it's right or wrong, that if the Labour Party had a small majority, this would mean increased influence for its left wing. If the Conservative Party, it's been said, had a large majority, then it would mean that they might change the character of their policy. I don't say it's true.
I wonder if the two parties are alike in this. We've got a recollection of big Conservative majorities, and we've a recollection of small Labour majorities.
Well, we shall have to see.
Well, now there, we must interrupt Oxford, I'm afraid, because our first result is through. We go now immediately from London to Cheltenham.
And here at Cheltenham, the counting has been completed, and they're now at the present moment just writing out the final score. I think in a moment the returning officer, the Mayor, Lieutenant Colonel Biggs, will get up to make his statement.
Mr. Returning Officer is about to ask the candidates whether they are satisfied with the way in which the count has been conducted. The figures are being brought up to him now. Are you satisfied, Major Hicksby?
Yes, sir, I'm absolutely satisfied.
Yes, I am absolutely satisfied.
Thank you.
And the results? Well, will you everybody keep quite quiet whilst the results are being announced? All the papers been completely given, because the Mayor, the Mayor, Colonel Biggs, the returning officer, is about to announce the results. Would you like to get on your feet?
At the present moment, the ballot papers have been counted and the final figures being entered up for the returning officer to read. And already outside, the crowds are cheering. I think news may have leaked out of the result, and here is the Mayor.
I, returning officer for Cheltenham, hereby give notice that the total number of votes given for each candidate at this election was William Whitehead Hicksby, 24,259, James Finnegan, 16,638, and that William Whitehead Hicksby has been duly elected Member of Parliament for the Cheltenham constituency.
Well, news has got outside. And there's applause in here from supporters of both candidates. And now I think we must go back to Richard Dimbleby in the London studio.
Well, there was our first result. And Butler?
There was a swing to the Conservatives of just over 2%. If every constituency in the country behaves as Cheltenham has done, there will be a majority of about 115 for the Conservatives over Labour.
And now we take you from London straight to Salford.
At Salford, we're looking at Mr. Donald Moore, the Conservative candidate on the left, and Mr. Charles Royal, the Labour candidate on the right, just facing his tie, because the result of Salford West is ready. There is the town clerk, Mr. R.R. Thornton. There, right in the centre, Mr. Donald Moore, the Conservative candidate, led by the Mayor, Alderman Goulden. The procession will move out onto the balcony. It's Mr. Royal and Mr. Moore going out side by side. And there you see the illuminated boards on which the result will be announced. Moore is Conservative, Royal Labour.
1955. I, George Henry Goulden, being the returning officer for the Salford West constituency, hereby declare that the total number of votes given for each candidate at the election are as follows. Henry Donald Moore,
21,554. Charles Royal, 22,413. And that Charles Royal has been duly elected to serve as a Member of Parliament for the said constituency of Salford West.
And so that means that Mr. Charles Royal, whom you see waving to his supporters now, who won by 3,487 in 1951, is now once again the Member of Parliament for Salford West. And so, with the crowd outside the Salford Art Gallery cheering their new Member of Parliament for Salford West, Mr. Charles Royal, the Labour Party's candidate, I return you from Salford to the studio in London.
And here in the studio we have time now, I think, for some comment from you, Butler, on both those results.
Well, in Salford and Cheltenham alike, the turnover in votes from Labour to Conservative was almost exactly the same. 2.2 in Cheltenham, 2.4 in Salford. And on that basis, if the whole country behaves like that, a swing of between 2 and 2.5%, the Conservatives will have a lead over Labour at the end when all the results are in, if the whole country behaves like that, of about 120 seats clear over Labour. The other notable thing about these two results is that in both of them the turnout was substantially down. 8% down, I think, in Salford, and 4% down in Cheltenham. It does seem that this quiet election has produced a lower poll. It's very interesting to see this as the evening goes on.
Now, I'm going to make a note of the figure that you've given, because I believe in holding experts to their predictions. 120, unless something unexpected happens.
If the rest of the country behaves as Salford does, in the past the country has behaved in an extraordinarily unified way. One part of the country has behaved just like another.
All right, well, if it does, we'll see what happens. I've got the figure down. And now I think we might move out of town again. Let's get some comment on the situation from the Midlands. We go now from London out to Cheltenham.
Please.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor.
Speak right at it and
Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen, this result in Cheltenham, which I'm glad to say is an early one, will undoubtedly give a lead to the country. You have shown in Cheltenham that you believe in going forward with the Conservative Party. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad to say you have decided to go forward with the Conservative Party and not back with the Socialists. Thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen, for a very fair campaign. And all I can say is I hope very much that everyone of every party will come and discuss with me any problem they want, because now I represent all people of Cheltenham.
ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for the kind way in which you have received me in Cheltenham. And if you look at the voting, you will find we are just about 120 down on the last election. So, and with the calumny of lies and abuse against my character by the Conservative Party of Cheltenham, and their attacks on the great trade union movement of this country, we shall live to fight another day. I hope the candidate will not forget the old age pensioners when he's returned to Parliament this time. Cheltenham will be one for Labour next time. All the best.
Now we're back in the studio in London, and I think that in a moment or two we're going to have a result of our own here. While that's on its way through, Butler, have you any comment to make on the general situation so far, which you think is appropriate?
I think I've stuck my neck out far enough for the time being. When 4 or 5 results are in, I shan't be so worried about the extension of my neck, but for the moment I think perhaps I'd better hold my peace.
Right. Meanwhile, our first result. I think we'll just wait a moment until it comes up for you to study. Here it is, Billericay, Essex. Now this is a seat with a major redistribution. The boundaries have been very much changed. Bernard Brain was the retiring Conservative member, so that Mr. Boddy, the new member, wins the seat.
The turnout was slightly down from the turnout in the old Billericay division, and of course we may be hearing about Mr. Bernard Brain in a little while, because he's standing, I believe, for South East Essex, the adjacent constituency, which is part of the old carved-up constituency through redistribution.
Now, I think we have a moment, Bob Mackenzie, for you to give us some quick indication of the role which you will be playing. I may have to interrupt you for a result from the north of England if it comes through.
Well, Richard, I'm mainly concerned to look at the long-range trends tonight and the repercussions for the parties and for the next Parliament of those trends. Like David Butler, I have no doubt whatever on the 3 results we've had so far, that there is a distinct trend to the Conservatives, and a very considerable Conservative majority of at least 100 seems to be in the offing. Apart from that, I'm interested in the fate of certain individuals, the powerful, the rebellious, and the rest. And I may say now, there's quite a list of fairly rebellious characters in the old house who are in danger if this swing continues. A number of well-known names, including a number of famous people associated with Mr. Aneurin Bevan, are clearly in danger since they hold their seats by very narrow majorities.
Teddy Thompson, this question of redistribution, we've talked about it once or twice already. Have you something to say?
Yes, there is a point I'd like to try and get in, but I see I can't.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
You'll have it again in a moment.
Yes.
There is, in a moment, another result coming up. It is, in fact, a result we've had already. We give it to you now as a check. You heard yourselves the result from Cheltenham as it was given in Cheltenham before anybody else. Here are the figures, if you want to write them down or check them again. Now, I think if you've got them, good. Now, Teddy, continue.
Well, if I can get it in before the avalanche overtakes us, it is a practical point, this, that since the last election there has been a very extensive redistribution of parliamentary seats. The effect of it has been to bring the strength of the House of Commons, which is being elected now, up from 625 to 630. And it's left unaltered only 410 of the old constituencies. Now, the point there is that it's only in respect of those that we're able, when our scoreboards come up, to give gains and losses, because they're the only ones in respect of which you can establish a true comparison with last time. So just let's keep that in mind. Only 410 constituencies are concerned when we put up gains and losses.
Thank you. Now, Butler, this question of so early in the proceedings giving a figure, as you did, of probable results based on 1 or 2 constituencies. Are early constituencies so important that you can gauge accurately from them?
Early constituencies aren't very different from later constituencies. In fact, the reason why one can make a pretty good guess early on in the proceedings about the final outcome is because we in Britain are, perhaps thank God, so unified a country that what happens in one part of the country seems to happen in another. Past election results have shown an extraordinarily even turnover in votes in one constituency and another, right throughout the country. And so when I gave those rash predictions, not predictions, statements a moment ago, that if the country behaved like the rest of the country, if the rest of the country behaved like Cheltenham and Salford, I merely was saying that if that swing was applied to every other constituency in the country, making a little allowance for the redistribution of which Thompson spoke a moment ago, then this is the number of seats that would be affected. And so we shall see. When we've had 5 or 6 results, I think we really shall be fairly confident about the actual number of seats that are likely to be in the majority.
Is that what's called being a psephologist? I've heard that word used about you, and I gather it's rather a controversial word.
It's a somewhat indiscreet word which was coined by my mentor in the study of elections, Mr. R.V. McCallum, who said that we must have a word to describe the study of elections, and he invented this word, psephology. When the Greeks, the ancient Greeks, voted in Athens, they dropped a pebble in the urn, and they called it a sephos. And so there is this word, psephology, P-S-E-P-H-O-L-O-G-Y, like psychology with E-P instead of Y-C. That's where the word is. Here's another result.
Psephologist today, Salford, I think, is ready with another result. We go straight London to Salford.
And here we're ready with the result of Salford East. There is the mayor, once again going to do his duty, Alderman George Goulden, JP. And the candidates here are Mr. Frank Alorn, Labour, and Mr. John Whiteley, Conservative. And so far it's almost impossible to find one of the candidates in the... I can just see Mr. Whiteley trying to push his way through. Mr. Whiteley, the Conservative candidate. There is Mr. Whiteley. Unfortunately swamped by his supporters. There's Mr. Whiteley now, just the back of his head being congratulated by one of his supporters as he goes out onto the balcony. And here, remember, Alone, Labour.
1955, I, George Henry Goulden, being the returning officer for the Salford East constituency, hereby declare that the total number of votes given for each candidate at the election are as follows. Frank Alorn, 20,381. John Whiteley, 18,623. And that Frank Alorn has been duly elected to serve as Member of Parliament for the Salford East constituency.
And so Mr. Frank Alorn has been elected for Salford East, a seat formerly held by Alderman Hardy for the Labour Party, but Alderman Hardy did not recontest because of ill health. And now here is Mr. Frank Alorn with his vote of thanks.
My spirit is high. We've won thanks to the magnificent sacrifice of the Labour Party members. And we are going to win the general election too. Let it be a victory for peace and socialism.
And so as Mr. Whiteley comes up to second the vote of thanks.
But I am quite satisfied that the Conservative candidate, having reduced the majority by 5,000 votes, that my party will at least return to Westminster with a complete vote of confidence from the country of at least 75 to 100 seats. And that alone to me is a complete satisfaction, and I consider that my result here is a moral victory for the Conservative Party. Thank you all very much.
And so, with the wild cheering of the crowd as Mr. John Whiteley, a redoubtable fighter for the Conservative Party, a former councillor in East Salford, waves to the crowd, this wildly cheering crowd, and the news that Salford has returned 2 Labour MPs, we return you to Richard Dimbleby in the studio.
Has lost his deposit, I'm afraid, make it clear I was not making political comment, but merely I'm sorry for anybody who loses £150.
Oh, very neutral in this programme.
Yes,
we'll do our
indeed.
best to keep it so.
Well, the answer to what happens to deposits is that the government and hence the people get them in the end. I think it's rather like police court fines, so I wouldn't be too sure about that. Have we further comment anywhere on the table about the situation so far before we go ahead with any more results? In fact, I don't think there's time, because here's a result right across us. Manchester, Moss Side. Now here is a very famous, distinguished woman Conservative and former Minister, Dame Florence Horsburgh. She was Minister of Education for 3 years and Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health, and she holds this seat, which she has occupied for some 5 years, with Dundee for 14 years before. There was a Conservative majority in 1951 of 10,000 878.
Manchester's well ahead of the rest of the country in getting in its results. And we've now, from Blakely, Manchester and Moss Side, Manchester, had the results from the two unchanged constituencies in Manchester. And the swing in Blakely was about 4%, and the swing in Moss Side was 5.8%. It does suggest that Manchester is swinging much more sharply than the rest of Lancashire, and indeed than the rest of the country. That's
Thompson?
Well, I was just going to say that we've now, it might be worth noting, we've got 2 women returned of the 21 who sat in the last Parliament. There was Mrs. Jaeger in London, and there's Dame Florence Horsburgh here, who was, of course, one of the best known of the Conservative ladies in the House.
And now we have party totals again, and here they are. Thompson.
Yes, well, as you see, the trend appears for the moment to have been reversed. We've got the Conservatives now in the lead, Labour, Conservative 15, Labour 12. I don't think really that they demand any further comment at this particular stage, except to say that that is the lead that has now replaced the lead. And the last time we saw this table of Labour 8, Conservative 6.
Thank you. By the way, if I might ask a general question, this timing of results, I'm keeping an eye on the clock here as I have to. Is there any noticeable difference in the time at which we're getting our results now as compared with 3 or 4 or 5 years ago?
I think that we're beating 1950 easily. In 1950, actually, this programme went on the air at 10:15, 11:45, and we didn't have any results until we'd been on the air for 10 minutes or quarter of an hour. Last year, in 51, they started a good deal earlier, and the first results came about 10:15.
Thank you. Now we can go to the West Country. There's some more information available from Bristol. So let's go now, London, over to Bristol.
In Southampton, the main source of interest has been the Test division. The Itchen division was pretty safe for Labour, as was shown by the removal of the sitting member from Test to the rather safer anchorage of Itchen. As expected, Labour held Itchen by a comfortable, indeed an increased majority. You will see from our chart that the score in Southampton is, we've just had a flash at the Sun News in London, so back to Richard Dimbleby in the studio.
Yes, the news is the result for Warwick and Leamington, and in a moment you will see that it is that the Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Sir Anthony Eden, holds the seat which he has occupied for 32 years. He had a majority in 1951 of 9,803. I don't need to give you a resume of his career, I know, but I'm sure the butler will have something to say about the majority.
Well, this was a very nice compliment paid to Sir Anthony by his constituency, and also, of course, by the returning officer there, who had the count on the night, so that the British public should know as soon as possible the fate of Sir Anthony Eden. And he has got in by the big swing to him, well above the national average.
And now we return immediately to Bristol, whom we were forced to interrupt. So back again from London to Bristol.
To continue, the score in Southampton, as you will see from the chart, is now in 1955 1-all. It's easy enough, of course, looking back on the figures, to say that this change was bound to happen. There was a very big redistribution involving about 7,000 electors from Test to Itchen and another 7,000 from Itchen to Test. However, the result was just a little bit unpredictable because of the intervention of a Liberal candidate and also because of the growth of a rather large housing estate in the Test division. If we look at this chart, you'll see that the total Conservative vote now, in 1955, is nearly as big as the Labour vote, but not quite. If we look at the swing, we find that the swing in Southampton, for the two divisions put together, it doesn't make sense to take them separately because of redistribution, the swing is approximately 1.5%. So the net result in Southampton is that the first gain in the West Country, and indeed anywhere, has been recorded, and the score is 1-all. And now back to Richard Dimbleby in the studio.
Well, there's no further result in at this very moment. We might perhaps look at one of our boards for a moment. Our butler is waving a small card, which means he's got something he can add to the situation.
Well, I was actually warning you that I believe that very shortly we shall be getting a result, and before we got ourselves involved in talking about another thing, we were going to be interrupted by the result which you are in a moment going to be talking about, Richard.
What he means is there's a sort of rustling among the human machinery behind us, which tells us that something is about to happen. So before we do, in fact, take a spell by looking at the latest total board, we will give you the result as soon as it arrives. In fact, I think it's just here now. Here it is. It's down north. This, of course, is a Northern Irish seat. The winner of it follows the retiring member, Mrs. Patricia Ford. It's Mr. Curry. He fought East Flint in 1950 and again in 1951. Another result which follows close behind, here's Rotherham. Now here, a very well-known Labour personality, Mr. Jack Jones, who sat for 5 years and 5 years for Bolton before and was Parliamentary Secretary to the Ministry of Supply for 3 years, he holds the seat. There was a Labour majority in 51 of 14,807. This, of course, is one of the heavy industrial towns of the West Riding.
It's the first result we've had from Yorkshire, and there was a swing to the Conservatives of 2.3.
Thompson?
Oh, well, just a word. Jack Jones is, of course, a notable figure in the House. He was a steel worker himself, and he's a very robust personality.
Ask you to let me announce the fact that we have another result coming up at once. Here it is, Manchester Openshaw. This is a new seat, and it is won by Mr. Williams, the Labour candidate, who sat before for Droylsden. That's a seat which disappeared under redistribution, by the way. So there's no actual comparative figure to give you in the way of majority. Mr. Williams, by the way, is a member of Parliament who sat before for Heston and Isleworth for 5 years. Now here is another result. Butler, I'm sorry. Manchester Withington has followed right on the heels of the other Manchester. This is Sir Robert Carey, who was Parliamentary Private Secretary to Mr. Cruikshank, the Leader of the House. Sat for 14 years altogether. Another seat were of major redistribution.
Yes, there's not very much to be said about it. Turnout down, as in the rest of Manchester, by 7% in Clayton and 8% in Withington. I would just call attention, by the way, to that result we saw a moment or two back in Down. It is the most overwhelming result for the victorious candidate in a straight fight I've ever seen, with the victorious candidate getting no fewer than 97% of the vote, the defeated candidate getting only 3% of the vote and forfeiting his deposit.
And now there's news that there's a result to be declared at Watford, so we take you now from London straight over to Watford.
Well, in fact, there is no result at Watford yet, but the excitement here is getting absolutely to fever pitch, to use a cliche if you like. As you can see on that table, the centre table, where the bundles, right back to Richard Dimbleby then.
Back to me for a moment to announce another result from Lincoln. Now here, I think Butler will explain immediately. There's something interesting, Butler.
Yes, this is the first result in which Labour has improved its position on 1951. The swing to the Labour Party in this election in Lincoln is 2.2%. Now, we haven't had any case of any movement to Labour in any constituency yet of the 30-odd that we've had. But here we do have a case of a swing to Labour, perhaps due to the personality. I don't know. I don't believe candidate's personality makes a great deal of difference, but perhaps due to the personality of Mr. Geoffrey de Freitas, a very well-liked ex-junior minister on the Labour side.
He was, of course, Under Secretary of the Home Office and for Air. Another result comes in, this time from Liverpool Exchange. Well, here's a familiar seat and a familiar member, and everybody's now raising their hands. Mrs. Braddock, whom I may perhaps be allowed to call Mrs. Bessie Braddock, who has sat for 10 years here, a most vigorous campaigner, holds the seat against her opponents. This is another major redistribution, so I can't give a majority comparison. Any comment, please, on Mrs. Braddock?
Well, of course, Mrs. Braddock is one of the very colourful figures in the House, robust alike in physique and in her methods of controversy, and there was some dissension, I think, in the Divisional Labour Party in Exchange before she was adopted.
There is another result in, to interrupt you, Derby South. Another well-known member too, a leading member of the Labour Party and a former Olympic runner, Mr. Philip Noel Baker. He holds the seat. He sat for 21 years altogether. And another result again, Liverpool Toxteth. A minor redistribution here in this constituency. The sitting member was Mr. John Bevans, Conservative, was Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Works. he holds the seat.
A swing of 2% to the Conservatives, the first Liverpool result that's comparable. But he has another Liverpool result coming up, I think, now.
Yes, from Liverpool, Scotland. A minor redistribution again. The sitting member, Mr. David Logan, is a veteran member of the Labour Party. He sat for 26 years.
He's the oldest member of the House of Commons, or he will be the oldest member of the next House of Commons, aged 83. It's interesting, only 2 members have represented Scotland since 1885. T.P. O'Connor represented it from 1885 to 1929. Mr. Logan took over, and Mr. Logan presumably will be there for another 4 years or so.
I see there's another result about to come. Here it is from Bath. Conservative majority in 1951 was 5,296.
A 2% swing to the Conservatives, and the Liberal candidate forfeits his deposit.
Bath, often called the Queen of the West. And from Bath to Southport. In Southport, there was a Conservative majority of 17,853 in 1951. So the majority is slightly less for Mr. Roger Fleetwood Hesketh.
But it's only less because the turnout is down very much. There's actually a swing in the share of the vote to the Conservatives of 2.5%.
Another result follows. Wickham Bucks. Here the sitting member, Mr. John Hall, has sat for 3 years. This includes the manufacturing town of High Wycombe and the rural district round it, by the way.
And it's remarkable for being the biggest Conservative gain yet in votes. Now, fewer than 6% of the electorate seems to have moved from Labour to Conservative there, and the turnout hasn't dropped very much, only 4%. 82.5% of the people of Wycombe seem to have gone to the polls.
Yes, the Conservative majority in 51 was 1,753, so you can see the difference. That brings us to date, for the moment, on our spate of results, over which I hasten to say we have no control. They rush in on us as they come. Have I any comment, please, after this rush, from Mackenzie or Thompson on the situation as you see it? Mackenzie?
Well, just to recap, there's so far only been one seat in which there's been a swing to Labour. That was a small swing to Labour in Mr. De Freitas' seat. Otherwise, there's been a consistent swing to the Conservatives, ranging from a fraction of 1% up to 6% and more. It seems still, to me, to look consistently in the direction of a Conservative majority of at least 100 if the developments continue as they are so far. I might point out
holds the seat. He is the sitting member. He sat there for 2 years already. This is a residential suburb just north of Liverpool on the coast. And now, further north, urgent news, I think, from Glasgow. We take you now from our studio straight over to Glasgow.
Well, back again in Glasgow, here is the third constituency to be announced this evening in the Royal Technical College, that is of Woodside. And to announce it is Sheriff Guild, who has the papers there just on the left of the two. The papers are just being brought to him. Here is Sheriff Guild.
I have now to declare the result of the election in Glasgow Woodside Division. For Mr. Grant, there voted 19,846. For Mr. McGinley, 15,543. The majority is 4,303. I have to declare Mr. Grant has been elected to the Woodside Division of the Glasgow, Woodside Division constituency in Glasgow.
And so the Unionist candidate, there he is, Mr. Grant, has been returned with a doubled majority in Woodside. And now back to Richard Dimbleby in London.
And we're in London, we have another Glasgow result. It's Glasgow to Glasgow. Here is Glasgow Hillhead, a major redistribution. The sitting member, Mr. Galbraith, who sat for 7 years, a Conservative whip, holds the seat after redistribution for the Conservatives.
A drop of 10% in the turnout.
Here is London Battersea North. A very well-known sitting member, Mr. Douglas Jay, holds the seat for Labour, Financial Secretary to the Treasury, Economic Secretary to the Treasury as well. There was a Labour majority in 51 of 16,077.
The Independent loses his deposit.
Here is Dewsbury. In Dewsbury, the sitting member, Mr. William Paling, has sat for 10 years. There's been here a major redistribution, a Liberal candidate this time too.
He's very unlucky, just loses his deposit by a hair's breadth.
Yes. And Stretford, In Stretford, the sitting member, Mr. Samuel Storey, who has sat in the House for nearly 20 years altogether, 5 years for Stretford, holds the seat for the Conservatives. That's
Swing
a
of
cotton town.
just under 3% for the Conservatives.
And Newcastle upon Tyne East, where the sitting member is Mr. Arthur Blenkinsop, who has been Parliamentary Secretary to 2 ministries, has sat for 10 years and holds the seat for Labour. Sir Alfred Bossum holds the seat for the Conservatives. He sat altogether for 24 years. Conservative majority in 1951 in Maidstone was 6,447. Any comments from the other side of the table there? No? Well, meanwhile, you needn't bother, because I've just had news that Glasgow is ready to give us some more information, but I see that a result has come in meanwhile, so we'll just give the result first. Southend West, a major redistribution. Mr. Henry Channon, who sat in the House for 20 years altogether in the Southend area, has held the seat for the Conservatives.
Miss Heather Harvey, a leading Liberal figure, has saved her deposit, 15% of the vote.
And here is Bebbington. Here the sitting member, Mr. Henry Oakshott, has sat for 5 years, a junior whip, and he holds the seat for the Conservatives. The majority in 1951 that he had was 8,421.
That's the first result from the Wirral Peninsula, a swing of 1.25% to the Conservatives.
And now I think we might go from London briefly over to Glasgow to hear what's doing up there. To Glasgow.
Well, here in the Glasgow studio, we're very lucky to have got very quickly up from the counting rooms somebody whose face is, of course, very well known on television, but also equally well known in Kelvingrove, because he's been there for 31 years, I think. Is that right?
There and thereabouts, yes.
Yes,
there and thereabouts.
You have been returned with an increased majority, I think.
Oh, yes, we've more than doubled the majority, and naturally, I couldn't be more pleased. First of all, because we've had a lot of very hard-fought contests in Kelvingrove.
We must interrupt just briefly, Mr. Walter Elliott, there, for Sheffield Brightside, which has just come in. A major redistribution. The sitting member, Labour member, holds the seat for Labour. The Communist forfeits his deposit. And also, we have Birmingham Northfield, where, after major redistribution, Mr. Donald Chapman, the Labour candidate, holds the seat for Labour. I think in a moment we shall probably be returning to Scotland for the discussion there to be continued. Yes, we go back now to Glasgow. No, another result's come in meanwhile, I'm so sorry. From Northern Ireland, Belfast. Belfast East. Here the sitting member, the Ulster Unionist, Mr. Alan McKibben, who sat for 5 years, has held the seat for them. You'll see here a Sinn Féin candidate.
He loses his deposit.
There's another result too, before we return to Glasgow, from Rowley Regis and Tipton. This is a very famous sitting member, Mr. Arthur Henderson. Sat in the House for 23 years, and after minor redistribution, he holds this seat for Labour. He was Secretary of State for Air, Minister of State for Commonwealth Relations, and Under Secretary of the War Office, and for India and for Burma. So he returns to the House of Commons. Here comes Birkenhead. Labour majority in 1951 of 5,249, and Mr. Percy Collick, the sitting Labour member, holds the seat. He was joint parliamentary secretary to the Ministry of Agriculture in the previous Labour.
Swing for Conservatives of 1.5%.
At West Houghton in Lancashire, the sitting member, Mr. Tom Price, who sat for 4 years as a trade union official, holds the seat for Labour. In 51 there was a majority of 10,675. Mr. Dunnett, his opponent, is a Market Gardner.
A swing to the Conservatives of virtually nothing.
That's a cotton district in South Lancashire.
Just over 0.1%.
Now I think we might return to the discussion that Mr. Walter Elliott was having, which we had to interrupt. Let us go back from London to Glasgow.
Well, there seem to be gremlins over the Great North Road this evening, but anyway, we hope you are with us now. And the Right Honourable Walter Elliott, who's, of course, with me here, was talking about his increased majority.
Well, I was saying, first of all, that we were delighted with it because we've had so many hard-fought battles in Kelvin Grove, and I'm especially grateful to all the workers who put in so much effort and who, I think, are equally glad myself of the result. And if any of them are watching, I'd like to thank them for their share in it. But I think also because this shows that a great industrial community in Scotland has come down decisively on the side of the present government. And I think that is a very encouraging feature, because industrial Clydeside has been in the forefront of all the difficulties, both political and economic, of the past 50 years. And this verdict from Clydeside is well something, and I do believe that this ought to be a great encouragement to all who believe in the forward-looking, progressive Tory movement of today.
And just one word about the women, Mrs. Walter Elliott. Have they done you well?
I think they've done splendidly.
Well, I hear the bell going. I'm terribly sorry. We must interrupt. We've got to go back to London for another announcement. Back to Richard Dimbleby in London.
William Clark is there to interview Lord Salisbury on our behalf. So let us go over to them now at Abbey House.
Thank you very much. Well, Lord Salisbury, this is, I think, our first appearance on television, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Well, I'm most grateful to you for coming in at this very short notice. And I'd like to ask you one particular question. Do you think that in the results, which you must be feeling fairly pleased with, that foreign policy has played a large part in the election campaign?
Yes, I think it has played a considerable part. As, of course, first of all, the personality of Sir Anthony Eden himself was well known to, during the last year, to have performed great feats of valour in that particular field. And I think the British people know that he is the best man to entrust foreign policy to at the present time. He and, of course, Mr. Macmillan, who will work together. But the personality of the Prime Minister is immensely important. And we've, up to now, had Sir Winston Churchill, and you couldn't have anyone better, obviously, in the whole country than Sir Anthony Eden to succeed him.
What other issues do you think have been coming up during this campaign of real importance that have given this swing towards you?
I think there's a general view that during the 4 years, nearly 4 years that we've been in office, the situation's improved. The general run of the people know that though in some respects things are not so good, there's been a comparatively small rise in the cost of living, yet that has been offset by a greater rise in the standard of living, where wages, the rise in wages have exceeded the rise in costs and so on. And there's a feeling that things are moving smoothly towards a greater degree of normality, and that in itself, of course, pleases everybody.
From your relatively sort of calm position, what would you think would be a good working majority? What's the minimum good working majority in the Commons?
Well, it's rather difficult for somebody who sits in the more remote atmosphere of the House of Lords to say. I should have thought that 50 would be perfectly adequate. Indeed, as you know, we've done on far less in the last 3 years.
And any prediction now, after watching the results, as to what it is likely to be?
I should hope it might be that, at any rate.
Yeah, I think it does look as though it would be that much. Well, Lord Salisbury, thank you very much indeed for coming here and taking part in your first television broadcast.
Well, I've been very happy to come and give my views what they're worth.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, back to Richard Dimbleby in the studio.
And back at once to my other half here, David Butler, who has some hard information for us.
Well, it's the work of the slide rule experts on my left, and they've been trying to check whether the swing over the whole country, roughly 2%, a little under 2%, has varied. 2% swing from Labour to the Conservatives has varied much in different types of area. And in the seaside resorts that we've had, there has actually been a very slight swing to Labour. In the mining constituencies, there's been a swing to the Conservatives, but well under 1%, well below the average. In Scotland, too, it's been only about half of what it is in the average. And I think there's another result, so I'll stop on that one.
There is. It's the result from Epsom in Surrey. The retiring member was Mr. Malcolm McCorquodale, Conservative. Mr. Rawlinson, who succeeded him, has held the seat, as you see, for the Conservatives. The Conservative majority in 1951 was 19,749.
There was a swing there to the Conservatives of 2 3/4%, well above the average. Again, if I can trust this, I was a little suspicious when I get results which I know include votes from one of the statisticians, and this Epsom result does include the votes from the man who's actually been calculating the precise amount of swing. So I never know quite whether he's trying to overweight his own vote in some way or other. Not that I know how he voted, of course.
Any further comment on Epsom from anybody? David, would you like to continue what you were saying before we had this sudden result?
Yes, I was drawing attention to the variations in swing, whether it was greater or less in different types of constituency in different parts of the country. Well, in London, in the county of London, those 42 seats, we haven't had all of them in, but based on about 37 of them, about 31 unchanged ones, the swing is just over 1%. Again, only a little more than half what it has been over the country taken as a whole. Now, one particularly interesting thing is to find out what the effect of Liberal intervention has been. Some people say, do Liberals take votes from the Conservatives or from Labour? Well, I've been checking on that, and it does seem that in constituencies where a Liberal didn't fight in 51, but intervened this time, he did take votes from the Conservatives. That is to say, the swing against Labour was smaller in those seats where the Liberals intervened. Conversely, in those seats where the Liberals fought in 51 and didn't fight this time, the Liberal withdrawal seemed to help the Conservatives. So in this election, as in 1951, it does seem the Liberal vote, when a Liberal stands, is taken rather more from the Conservatives than from Labour, but it's certainly taken from both sides.
I observe that while Butler is talking, the total vote board is being made up. In a moment or two, I think we shall be able to see what the new total is, and I think I shall spring it upon Bob or Teddy over there to make a comment upon it when the figure's ready. After that, we might perhaps, if you'd like to, have a dive out, if we can, and see what's going on up in that counting hall at Leeds, where we're still waiting for them to get to their result. There may be some time yet. Anyway, if we see the voting board in a moment, talk about that, I shall then be able to find out whether Leeds is ready to take us, or whether we'll find everybody with their backs turned when we get there. Party totals, meanwhile.
Very little new here, of course. On the whole, surprisingly few seats have changed hands when you consider there is this average swing to the Conservatives of 2%. We can expect rather more of a change of hands in seats today if the Conservatives are to build up the majority, which we're fairly confidently predicting they will, on the strength of the general trends. But it looks as if it's neck and neck on the right-hand column, but as we've said again and again, of course, Labour needs at this stage of the game to be not 1 seat ahead as they are, but probably 30 or 40 seats ahead if they are to win this election. And of course they're not that far ahead.
One point that strikes me, without having the figures in front of me, though I've managed to arrange with Butler, he's got them in front of him, is whether the timing of results coming in this morning today is showing any great change from 1951. As a layman, I was expecting to see something very much quicker.
Well, of course, they were much quicker last night. Oh, look, I think the party total votes are up, which would be interesting to see.
Go ahead and deal with them, yes.
There you see now we're getting up 15.5 million, not many things in this morning. The party proportion's the same as when we last showed this board, 50% for the Conservatives, 47% for Labour. Actually the same as when we showed, I think, about 3 o'clock in the morning. And the 7 3/4 millions are getting on for votes for the Conservatives, and getting on for 7.5 millions for Labour. The Liberals still 300,000, with about half the results in from constituencies where Liberal candidates were standing. Just 100,000 votes for the others, and actually considerably less than 1% of the vote for them. But we didn't bother you with any fractions on that board. I think it's got enough on it for the ordinary 10-inch television screen as it is.
Now let's come back a moment from vote totals to this question of time, David.
Yes, well, it is interesting. Last night they went much faster than they did in 51, and we really planned our operation to some extent on the way they came in 51, and we did manage to keep our heads above water, but only just last night. Well, this morning so far they've been coming in more slowly. By this time in 51 we'd got, I think, 4 results in. Reigate, one of the ones we've already had, oddly enough, and Lancaster. Lancaster came out just before 10:30 last time and came out about 10:30 this morning. And it was followed fairly closely by Reigate, which came out last time at about 11:15 and has come out about 11:15. Also, by this time, we'd got the result in from Billericay, but that was counted last night. This year was counted last night. We're not on the second day as it was back in 51. Then the Epsom division of Surrey, yes, that we have had in. That's, of course, the third result we've had in this morning, and that, oddly enough, came in at almost exactly the same time to the minute as it came in this morning. But looking ahead, by 12 o'clock, 8 more results had come in 1951. Be interesting to see whether, in this respect, 1955 can beat 1951. Perhaps you'd call that progress.
Meanwhile, progress, apropos of progress, a result is on its way in. We'll just hold our horses for a second. It's not convenient, incidentally, for us to go over to Leeds just at the moment anyway, so that the best thing we can do is to get this more vital information, which we shall have with us very shortly, just coming up now. Nottingham West. Well, now here is a new seat which has been won by Mr. Tom O'Brien, who sat for 5 years here in its previous form, and for West Nottingham for 5 years before. Mr. O'Brien, let me say, is a well-known trade union official. He's the General Secretary of NATCE, as it's called in the cinema industry, the National Association of Theatrical and Kine Employees, and a recent chairman, too, of the TUC. So Mr. Tom O'Brien has Nottingham West for Labour.
His majority is enormously down on last time when he stood in Nottingham North West, but there's been a considerable change. However, he is one of the most flamboyant characters, and I'd like to hear what Thompson has to say about Tom O'Brien.
Well, I mean, flamboyant does it, I think. He is Tom O'Brien is a very colourful figure, a very forthright controversialist who can't be relied upon to toe any line. He's done some very sensational things, but he's a very, on the whole, well-respected figure in the trade union movement, and has, of course, recently been chairman of the TUC. The other point I wanted to make was that this is the first Nottingham result, and I think, David, you'll agree that Nottingham is one of the most interesting of the redistributed areas.
It is indeed very interesting.
And
May I interrupt you? I'm sorry. Party totals are in, and you'll see for the first time we have a dead heat here.
Oh, yes.
No doubt, Butler, you can explain whether that has any great significance.
I don't think it has any great significance. It's only confirming what we all along said was more or less bound to happen if this time's results resembled last time's. The Conservatives, as the county divisions came in, were bound to pull ahead. Labour hasn't had any results in so far this morning, except this last one, which I don't think may not be included in this total. The Conservatives have had 3 results in from county divisions, mainly in Surrey.
The Isle of Ely. Major Henry Legge Burke, Conservative, the sitting member, holds the Isle of Ely for the Conservatives. In 1951, the Conservative majority was 6,404.
A swing of just 0.5% to the Conservatives.
Here is Swansea East. Here, the sitting member, Mr. David Mort, who sat in the House for 17 years, holds the seat for Labour after a minor redistribution. I can't give you an earlier majority figure there.
It was a very small redistribution. The earlier majority, I think, was 21,000. His majority does seem to have gone down about 4,000. It was just a small change in ward boundaries in Swansea, I believe. There was a 72% poll there. That's to say, a 10% drop in the number of people going to the poll in Swansea East.
Another result is in from Kent. It's Faversham. Here in Faversham, there is a Conservative gain where the sitting member, Mr. Percy Morris, who sat for 10 years, holds the seat for Labour. And now back to your point, if you like, about...
Well, Faversham... It's the first Conservative gain of the day.
There's urgent news from Leeds. We take you now straight from London to Leeds.
939. I declare Mr. Healy duly elected.
Leeds East was Dennis Healy, Socialist, 26,083. Cyril Chapman, Conservative, 21,144. A Labour majority of 4,939. And so with that, Labour victory in Leeds East. Back to Richard Dimbleby in the studio.
We have another result here, in fact 2 more waiting now. Here is Sudbury and Woodbridge in Suffolk, where Mr. John Hare, Conservative, was the Vice Chairman of the Conservative Party, Lord Woolton's deputy, holds the seat for the Conservatives. The Conservative majority in 1951 was 5,952.
The Liberal forfeits her deposit.
And in Newark, Nottinghamshire, a major redistribution, And the sitting member, Mr. George Deere, holds the seat for Labour. He's been in the House for 20 years.
Some people thought redistribution would make the difference.
Party totals.
Well, it's now gone up, the Conservative lead has now gone up about 50 to 52.
176, 173 results still to come on to today. They haven't actually yet caught up with that change in Faversham on the scoreboard. We should have that doubtless next time we go to it.
Another result is in from Essex, Chigwell. This is a new seat, and it has been won by Mr. John Biggs Davison, the Conservative candidate, who fought South Coventry in 51.
Chigwell is partly made up of Woodford, it's Winston Churchill's division, which has been redistributed.
And here is Murray and Nairn. The sitting member, Mr. James Stewart, Secretary of State for Scotland, Conservative whip who sat for 32 years, holds the seat for the Conservatives. The 1951 Conservative majority was 5,394.
0.5% swing to the Conservatives and Murray and Nairn.
Canterbury, Kent. In Canterbury, the sitting member, Mr. Leslie Thomas, Conservative, has sat for 2 years. He holds the seat for the Conservatives. In 1951, the Conservative majority was 14,089.
1.5% swing to the Conservatives.
He is the son, by the way, of the late Mr. J.H. Thomas. Another result in from Devonshire, this time it's Tiverton. And here, the sitting member, Mr. Heathcote Amory, who sat for 10 years, Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food, and other ministerial jobs before that, holds a seat for the Conservatives. The 51 majority for Conservatives was 10,448.
A 1% swing to the Conservatives.
Down south, one from Northern Ireland now, Captain Lawrence Orr, Ulster Unionist, who sat for 5 years, holds the seat for the Ulster Unionists or for the Conservatives. There was a Sinn Féin candidate, as you see.
This isn't like North Down, where the Conservative got 97% of the vote and the Sinn Féin candidate only got 3%. The most fabulous straight fight result I've ever seen in any English election statistics of this century.
Now that brings us for one moment of taking breath up with the results, but here is another straight away. Salisbury, Wiltshire. The sitting member, Mr. John Morrison, who sat for 13 years, holds Salisbury for the Conservatives. The Conservative majority in 1951 was 5,412. The Liberal candidate keeps his deposit. Here is Peterborough, Northamptonshire. And in Peterborough, the sitting member, Mr. Harmer Nichols, holds a seat for the Conservatives. He sat for 5 years. He's the Parliamentary Secretary to the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food. This, I think, was a marginal seat.
After 2 majorities under. Oh, well, I'll leave that.
Yes, here is Essex South East, a new seat which has been won by Mr. Bernard Brain, Conservative, who sat for Billericay for 5 years before this. Another result from Essex, it is Malden, Essex. Here, Mr. Harrison, here there is a Conservative gain from Labour. The retiring member was Mr. Tom Dryburgh, a well-known Labour member. Mr. Linton Scutts succeeded him and has been defeated by Mr. Harrison, Conservative. The Labour majority in 1951 was a small one, 704.
1.5% swing to the Conservatives made that difference in Malden.
And here is the Isle of Wight. In the Isle of Wight, Sir Peter MacDonald, a well-known Conservative member who sat for 31 years, holds the Isle of Wight for the Conservatives. The 1951 Conservative majority in the island was 12,789. After the Isle of Wight, we come to Stafford and Stone, county constituency of Staffordshire. The son of Lord Lovat, Hugh Fraser, the Conservative member, who sat for 10 years in the House, holds this for the Conservatives. There was a majority in 1951 for the Conservatives of 6,046.
A swing for the Conservatives of almost 3.5% in Stafford and Stone to Mr. Hugh Fraser.
Now, although there's a momentary pause, I know that other results are shortly to be on the way.
This is what we call the spate.
The spate, you're right. Does anybody like to take 10 seconds? Mackenzie.
Well, just on Malden, of course, it was one of the most hotly contested constituencies in the whole area of East Anglia. Much interest in it, held formerly by Tom Dryburgh, who had a great personal following, now been lost by Labour.
Here is Hertfordshire East, where the Conservative sitting candidate, Mr. Derek Walker-Smith, chairman of the Conservative Backbenchers Committee, the 1922 committee, holds the seat for the Conservatives. It's a new seat, this. And straight on, I'm afraid, no comment there, Mackenzie, much as you'd like to. Caerphilly, Glamorgan, where the sitting member, Mr. Ness Edwards, was Postmaster General and Parliamentary Secretary to the Ministry of Labour and National Service, holds the seat for Labour. In 1951, the Labour majority was 21,482.
There must be something wrong with those figures. I just warn people, we may have to...
Yes, those figures don't tally with... All right, we'll wait and see on Caerphilly. We'll move on straight away anyway to Chorley in Lancashire. Chorley, Lancashire, the sitting member, glad it's back, the sitting member, Mr. Clifford Kenyon, Labour, holds the seat for Labour. There was a 1951 Labour majority of 583.
This was a marginal seat some people thought would change hands. Labour's firmly in.
Now we have urgent news from Leeds. We take you once again from London over to Leeds.
And here's Sir James Croysdale, the Lord Mayor of Leeds, with the final Leeds result, Leeds West. It's panel Labour, highly Conservative, Hudson Liberal. So, panel is Labour, highly Conservative,
Leeds
Hudson
West.
Liberal.
Mr. Thomas Charles Panel, 24,576. For Alderman Joseph Hiley, 18,312. Mr. Harold Hudson, 3,699. I declare Mr. Panel duly elected.
And so the Labour Party has won 4 of the 6 seats, and as Mr. Pannell makes his address to the large crowd, we say goodbye to you from Leeds and return you once again to Richard Dimbleby in the studio.
Now the results in the studio. This is Harborough in Leicestershire. A major redistribution here. Sitting member Mr. John Baldock, Conservative, holds the seat for the Conservatives.
The Liberal improves his position on last time and saves his deposit by a fairly narrow margin this time.
In Uxbridge, Middlesex, a marginal seat, the Labour and Cooperative sitting member, Mr. Frank Beswick, continues to hold the seat for Labour. A 1951 Labour and Co-op majority of 1,548.
Yeah. Here was a marginal seat that might well have changed hands. It hasn't, and this may affect people's estimates of the final majority.
Here is Bedfordshire, Bedfordshire Mid. A minor redistribution. The sitting member, Mr. Alan Lennox Boyd, Secretary of State to the Colonial Office and formerly Minister of Transport and Civil Aviation, holds the seat for the Conservatives. There's urgent news now from Glasgow. We will go straight away from London over to Glasgow. Yes? I'm sorry, I'm wrong. We stay on the results and we don't go to Glasgow, so we'll turn out the red light up there. Surrey East. Mr. Charles Doughty, Conservative, the sitting member, barrister, has held the seat for 4 years, holds it against his opponent, also a barrister. 1951 Conservative majority was 23,910.
A 1.9% swing, almost 2% swing to the Conservatives in East Surrey.
Here is Lanarkshire North. Lanarkshire North, the sitting member, Miss Margaret Herbison, a leading woman member of the Labour Party, a broadcaster too, who sat for 10 years and was Joint Under Secretary of State for Scotland, holds the seat for Labour. There was a 1951 Labour majority of 6,304.
Hardly any change in the proportion since 1951.
We move straight on to Stirlingshire West. In Stirlingshire West, where there was a minor redistribution, the sitting member Labour, Mr. Alfred Balfour, sat for 10 years. He holds the seat for Labour. Here is another Scottish result, Perth and East Perthshire. Perthshire. And here, the sitting member, Colonel Alan Gom Duncan, Conservative, who sat altogether in the House for 10 years, holds the seat for the Conservatives.
The Scottish Nationalist did better than the Labour Party one. That's extremely interesting there. He comfortably saved his deposit.
Stoke-on-Trent Central. The sitting member, Dr. Barnett Stross, Labour, sat for 10 years in the House after minor redistribution, keeps the seat for Labour. We now have the party totals.
Yes, well, the Conservative lead has now gone up again to 54.
We move straight on now to the next result, which is waiting, Stoke-on-Trent North. Stoke-on-Trent North, minor redistribution. Mrs. Harriet Slater, the Labour and Cooperative sitting member, holds the seat for Labour. Here is Leeds East. In Leeds East, a new seat, Mr. Dennis Healy, a backbench Labour expert on foreign affairs, has the seat for Labour. He was formerly sat for Leeds South East for 3 years.
We had that announced on sound already.
So we did. That's a check result, yes. Here is Stoke-on-Trent South. A minor redistribution here, and the sitting member, Mr. Ellis Smith, Parliamentary Secretary of the Board of Trade at one time, holds the seat for Labour. There'll be another result, I think, here in one moment. So we will just stand by and wait for it for a second. Kenzie, do you want to fill in with that, what you were going to say? Or not?
Well, many results ago, I wanted to comment on the re-election of Derek Walker-Smith. You referred to him as chairman of the 1922 committee, and that tends to be a rather mysterious body to most people, with an odd title. Actually, it's the body which represents the entire group of conservative backbenchers. It's the equivalent to the Parliamentary Labour Party, minus the front bench, minus the cabinet ministers on the Conservative side.
Thank you very much. Sorry, the explanation is brief. There's urgent news from Glasgow now. We take you from London straight over to Glasgow.
And there is the Sheriff Principal of Glasgow, Sir Robert
Ladies and gentlemen, I have to declare the result of the election in Rutherglen. Mr. Richard Charles Brumman White, 19,141. Mr. Gilbert McAllister, 17,040. Majority 2,101. I therefore declare Mr. Brumman White the member for Rutherglen.
Well, the Unionists therefore retain the Rutherglen seat. And I hand you now back to Richard Dimbleby in the studio.
South Northamptonshire, in other words. The sitting member here is Sir Reginald Manningham Buller, Attorney General, who was Solicitor General before. He holds the seat for the Conservatives. For many people I know, excitement is now mounting very strongly.
Well, that shows a Conservative lead of 75 over Labour.
85 seats still to come, 9 seats for a clear majority for the Conservatives.
Here is Louth in Lincolnshire. The sitting member, Mr. Cyril Osborne, Conservative, holds the seat. He sat for 10 years here. 1951 Conservative majority was 5,768. Immediately behind it comes, I can never pronounce this. Abertillery, thank you. I always want to say Abertillery. In Monmouthshire. Here the sitting member is the Reverend Llewellyn Williams. He holds the seat for Labour. The 1951 Labour majority was 24,917.
The Conservative only just saves his deposit in Abertillery, if I am right on that.
You are, I think, yes. Ayrshire South. Ayrshire South from Scotland. The sitting member is Mr. Emrys Hughes, a well-known and very lively debater in the House of Commons, who holds this seat for Labour. The 1951 Labour majority was 7,836.
Swing of 1% to Labour in South Ayrshire.
Straight on to Kettering in Northamptonshire. The sitting member here, Mr. Gilbert Mitchison, Labour, sat for 10 years, holds the seat for Labour. The 1951 Labour majority was 6,827.
Swing of 1% to the Conservatives in Kettering.
Here comes a Scottish result. It's Stirlingshire, East and Clackmannan, where the sitting member is Mr. Arthur Woodburn, a most respected Labour member and a leading Scottish personality in the House, who sat here for 16 years, was once the Secretary of State for Scotland. The Labour majority here, he keeps the seat for Labour, of course, was in 1951 was 7,504.
And each got exactly the same share of the poll as they got in 1951.
I think at any moment we should have another look at our party totals. We must keep a close watch on them now because the figure is mounting towards the necessary ultimate total. And thereafter, should the total go the way in which our experts believe it will, we shall be watching for majority figures. The situation in the House of Commons, Teddy, we might look at that now, I think.
Yes, well, there it is, creeping along as we've expected it to do. It reflects the latest figures we've just been looking at, really. I don't think there's very much more one can elaborate on at the moment except to point to the diminishing gap there in the corner of the white Conservative side, every square representing 5 seats, and to wonder exactly how soon it'll be before that fills up, as it clearly must now.
Now we wait as a momentary pause now before we come to further results. There you have the situation in the House of Commons.
It might be just interesting if I were to interject there, if there's a split second to do it in. Somebody mentioned the position of the Speaker. There is rather an interesting point there, which may not be generally known, that The Speaker of the House of Commons, of course, like all other members of the House of Commons, ceases to be an MP at the dissolution. Dissolves Parliament, all the members' seats are voided automatically, including that of the Speaker, but he does not cease to be Speaker of the House of Commons. He retains certain functions which confer upon him the special status, even although he's no longer an MP.
It's another result cruising along on its way towards us, I think, which we will wait for.
Of course.
Meanwhile, here it comes. It is from Wiltshire. It's Chippenham. Here, the sitting member is Sir David Eccles, Minister of Education and then Minister of Works, who holds the seat which he's occupied now for 12 years for the Conservatives. The 1951 Conservative majority was 4,878.
The Liberal saves his deposit there by a relatively narrow margin, and there's a swing of 2.25% to the Conservatives to Sir David Eccles compared to the result last time. He must be getting very near to that critical 315th seat,
yes,
which denotes a clear Conservative majority in this election.
Another result is in. It's from Lichfield and Tamworth, Staffordshire. A major redistribution here. The sitting member, Mr. Julian Snow, a government whip and Vice Chamberlain of the Household, holds the seat for Labour,
defeating Mr. Blow by a margin bigger than last time.
Immediately behind it comes Ashford in Kent. The sitting member, William Deeds, Parliamentary Secretary, a junior minister, Parliamentary Secretary to the Ministry of Housing and Local Government for Ashford, Kent, holds the seat for the Conservatives. The 1951 Conservative majority here was 7,448.
Slightly above average swing to the Conservatives, I believe, there.
Nearly time to watch our party totals again, do you think,
I hope
David?
so, yes.
Well, we'll take... Oh, here they are.
Well, you see, here we go. That represents, 75, doesn't it? A lead of 75. The lead hasn't altered since the last showing. It's been fluctuating very narrowly about 75 for half an hour.
While that party total board remains there for a moment, David, would you make it clear for everybody to establish a lead and a government? The figure which is now increasing has to reach 315.
Yes, a clear majority is 315. If we exclude the Speaker, then there are 629 seats in the House. 315 is just one more than half of that. Here we see the figures going up very interestingly, and now we've got whatever it is. Right,
there's a result.
Lag. Here's a new result.
There is indeed. Coming from Suffolk, an important result from Lowestoft. In Lowestoft, the sitting member, Mr. Edward Evans, Labour, who sat for 10 years, holds the seat for Labour. The 1951 Labour majority was very small here, 847.
Yes, this was the last of the seats I drew your attention to about half an hour ago as a marginal seat that would be coming up and worth watching. I haven't on my list any unchanged marginal seats which seem very likely to change hands in the results to come.
Another result is here now. Hull North, Kingston upon Hull North, full title, a major redistribution here. The sitting member, Mr. Austin Hudson, Conservative, who sat for 5 years, has held this seat for the Conservatives.
And many people thought this seat would be lost to the Conservatives because of redistribution. There was a 78% poll there. Mr. Hudson and Mr. Ford, who fought each other in 51, have fought again on a more favourable ground for Mr. Ford, but it wasn't quite favourable enough, and Mr. Ford is out by a majority of 590.
I think we'll just sit tight on these results now, even if we wait. This is an exciting moment, and we mustn't miss it. Here comes another result. It's from the far north, from Gateshead, northeast, Gateshead East, where there was a major redistribution. Mr. Arthur Moody, a Labour candidate who sat in the House for 10 years, has held this seat for Labour. This is the south bank of the Tyne, opposite Newcastle, of course.
That's the seat Mr. Ziliakos sat for once.
Here's a result from Meriden, which incidentally, you know, is the very centre, the very heart of England, from Meriden, Warwickshire. A new seat which has been won by Mr. Moss for Labour.
This was one of the new seats which was really marginal. Many people thought that it would go Conservative, but Labour holds it by an adequate majority.
I think there's a result now on its way from across the border again, which we will hold on for. Here it comes. It is from Midlothian, a new seat again, which has been won for Labour by Mr. David Pride. He was formerly a minor, Mr. Pride.
I've done some very interesting calculations here, which I think are really very important. Of the seats still to come, it's not possible because of redistribution to say exactly, but it does seem that they're about even between the parties. That is to say, if there's not much swing in those seats, then the parties won't change their majority relative to each other much on the 90-odd results we've still got to come in. So perhaps we are seeing something pretty near to the final majority on the present scoreboard when we next go to it.
In the House, we think.
Yes, they necessarily, logically, have to be the largest party in the House, because, well, here...
Marginal seat. The sitting member, Mr. Fred Blackburn, holds it for Labour. The 1951 Labour majority was 298. And Kingston upon Hull East, there was a major redistribution here. The sitting member, Commander Harry Percy, Labour, who sat for 10 years, a well-known member of the House, in this major redistribution holds the seat for Labour.
That Stalybridge and Hyde result is really the most important. Again, I slipped up slightly, saying that we got all the marginal seats in. There were Stalybridge and Hyde and North Norfolk. Well, there was Stalybridge and Hyde, and it was held by Labour, down from 298 to 155.
Another result from Cardiff North changes the Conservative figure. Mr. David Llewellyn, who was Under Secretary at the Home Office, holds this seat for the Conservatives. The 1951 Conservative majority was 6,808.
Can't be many minutes now.
Another result, I think, is on its way from Lincolnshire. The constituency is Brigg. Here, Mr. Edward Malalieu, the Labour sitting member, holds the seat for Labour. He'd had it for 7 years. In 1951, the Labour majority in Brigg was 8,089.
A 2.5% swing to the Conservatives in Brigg, but not in the least enough to endanger the majority of Mr. Malalieu, whose brother was elected last night in Huddersfield.
Perhaps we might see the party total board again in a moment. Here it is.
Yes, the 300 still at 313 on the Conservative side. The sway of the results, of course, is very tantalising at this stage. You never quite know how long it'll take.
Here is another result from Brierley Hill in Staffordshire. A minor redistribution. Mr. James Simmons, Labour, the sitting member, who sat in the House for 12 years and has been a junior minister, he holds this seat for Labour.
Yes, it would have taken a 2.5% swing to oust him. There was only a 1.5% swing in Brierley Hill.
We'll look for a moment at the interior of the House of Commons again, Terry.
Yes, well, there you see, it only requires now, that's 2 seats, isn't it, I think?
2.
Two to be filled up, to give the Conservatives what you might call a mathematical majority over all other parties in the House of Commons. It wouldn't be a working majority if it stopped at that, but that is the decisive moment mathematically when they go into a majority over other parties. We haven't reached it yet, as you can see. There are
another result comes in, and I think it's going to have an effect on the situation in North Yorkshire. Here, the Conservative candidate has the seat. The sitting member, Mr. Robert Turton, who's a junior minister. 1951 Conservative majority was 17,162. That means we have one more Conservative seat needed, and further results, I think, are just coming in. Could we see the party total board a moment, perhaps, to confirm that? Yes? Yes. Now here is another result coming in North Cornwall, and I think this is the decisive figure.
Well, we don't know about these Press Association totals, which may be confusing us a bit.
If the totals are correct, this result from Cornwall North, I think I'm right in saying, where the sitting member, Sir Harold Roper, has held the seat for the Conservatives, where the Conservative majority in 1951 was 5,140, according to my calculations, and I may be wrong, mean that there will be, or is, a Conservative government. Now, I hasten to say in saying that if my calculation is correct. Behind Cornwall North, there comes another result, Arundel and Shoreham, where the sitting member, Captain Henry Kirby, holds the seat for the Conservatives. The 1951 Conservative majority was 18,023. Here comes Yeovil in Somerset, where the sitting Conservative member, Mr. John Peyton, holds the seat for Conservatives with a Conservative majority in 1951 of 2,921. As soon as our
The Liberal did quite well there and saved his deposit. But we're really mainly interested in the two major parties just at the moment, at this tense moment, waiting for the next 2 or 3 results to come in, which will settle or seal the question of the next government.
The next result is Welsh. It comes from Denbigh, Denbighshire. And there, the sitting member, Mr. Garner Evans, National Liberal, holds the seat as a National Liberal. The 1951 National Liberal majority was 7,915.
The Liberals move up from 3rd to 2nd place there. The Liberals have done remarkably well in those 2 of those last 3 results. In North Cornwall and in Denbigh they did well. Here's that critical result I mentioned before.
From North Norfolk. In North Norfolk, the sitting member, Mr. Edwin Gooch, President of the National Union of Agricultural Workers, holds the seat for Labour. The Labour majority in 1951 was only 279.
And there's a 1.2% swing to Labour there where they need it most.
We come now to another result from Wales, Aberavon. Here, Mr. William Cove, the sitting member, holds the seat for Labour. 1951 Labour majority, 18,620 party totals. And here you see the figure has been exceeded, and therefore I can confirm what I said earlier, that there will be a Conservative government.
Well, the figure there is now decisive.
We'll see, perhaps for a moment, the interior of the House of Commons too.
Well, now that shows the situation graphically presented, where the Conservatives, having filled the white half, squares, 5 seats to a square, have now got sufficient seats to move over into the other side and express their absolute mathematical majority in that way. And there it is.
One more result now waits to come in and can't be delayed. East Grinstead in East Sussex. There was a major redistribution. Mrs. Emmett, the new Conservative candidate there, takes the seat or retains it for the Conservatives. And we now go from this studio over to Abbey House, the Conservative headquarters, to William Clark.
Well, here, of course, in the last 5 minutes, there has been a good deal of excitement in Abbey House. But it's only a fairly sober form of excitement. Really, last night was the time in which there was a feeling of triumph. Today, there is a great interest in whether or not there is going to be a workable majority for the new Conservative government. And I couldn't get anyone upstairs in the chairman's room to commit themselves as to what they thought they would have. But they are still hoping that they will have a considerably larger majority than they had in the last House, and one which will make it a good deal easier for the government to carry on. But for the moment, though there is confidence, it is sober, they do realize that there is certainly no landslide, and we will expect later in the day to hear the official views of leaders of the party on their victory. Right now, back again to Richard Dimbleby in the studio.
There are in the studio some more results waiting, which we must take, I think, if they're ready for the board. Hello? Before we take these results, we're going to take you straight over to Labour Party headquarters. We go to Bob Mackenzie, from here to Bob Mackenzie at Transport House.
Here in Transport House is Morgan Phillips, the General Secretary of the Labour Party. Now, Mr. Phillips, has the result come as a surprise to you, this Conservative victory?
Well, not wholly as a surprise. It's a disappointment, of course, naturally, when you lose an election. But I would like to ask you to keep in mind the fact that we were fighting this election side by side with the local election, that we knew we were bound to lose seats because of the terrific gains we'd made 3 years ago. And it seems to me that all the pollsters have been doing their best as well in order to create the impression that Labour had no prospect. We therefore had to fight this down, and I think we've done remarkably well over the last weekend. I would like to have done better.
Some of the commentators have said that it's been a failure of turnout on the Labour side that accounts for the result. Now, do you feel that the Labour Party has failed to get its members out to vote on this occasion?
In some respects, yes. But that's not true in every case, because you've seen some narrow marginal seats that we have held that ought to have been lost if the general average swing was applied to those seats. And we therefore feel that generally the overall reduction in the poll has been to our disadvantage.
Well, now, tell me, it's sometimes said that the Labour Party has a less effective organisation than the Conservative Party. Are you prepared to grant points to your opponents on this?
No, not generally. There are parts of the country where they probably would have. And in any case, you see they're able to maintain a much bigger paid organisation in the country, whereas we have to depend for the most part upon voluntary labour.
Can you say a word about the future now? It looks like 4 more years of opposition for Labour. Do you feel discouraged at the prospect?
Well, I'm naturally discouraged that there's a Conservative government at all, or any prospect of it at any time. But I do think that it will certainly give us the opportunity of revitalizing the party. We shall have to keep on our toes because we believe, you know, rightly or wrongly, that traditional Toryism is back in the saddle. And unless the Labour movement is vital and alive, we should be going back to some of the policies that are so damaging to the interests of the mass of the people.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Morgan Phillips. Returning you now to Richard Dimbleby in the studio.
Now you've heard Mr. Morgan Phillips' opinion of the situation now, and we have in the studio waiting some more results with which we will proceed. First of all, Normanton in West Yorkshire. Here, the sitting member, Mr. Albert Roberts, who sat for 4 years, has held this seat for Labour. In 1951, the Labour majority was 19,853.
They got just the same share of the poll this time as they did last time, the Conservative and the Labour candidates there.
And in Cardiff West, a very well-known Welsh member of the House, Mr. George Thomas, has held the seat for Labour. The 1951 Labour majority was 5,400.
With a slight swing to Labour there.
We go to the extreme north for the result from Blyth, where once again the sitting member is a very well-known Labour member, Mr. Alfred Robins. He has sat for 5 years for Blyth and holds the seat for Labour. The 1951 Labour majority was 25,639. Mr. Robins, of course, was a minister.
A 1% swing to the Conservatives in that Northumberland seat.
Before the next result, we'll take the party totals again.
Yes, well, now the lead of the Conservatives over Labour has been pulled back to 62. And I think our interest from now on will begin to concentrate on this question of what lead the Conservatives are going to have, what majority they're going to have. At the moment it's 62 as against 70 a little while ago with the run of the results.
And 54 seats still to come in.
And more results are coming in. Here is the result for Belper, Derbyshire. Here the sitting member is an ex-minister, Mr. George Brown, who sat for 10 years, and he has kept the seat for Labour, the 1951 Labour majority being 8,197.
An 82% turnout in Belper, that's high.
To the west, to Glamorganshire for Neath, where the sitting member again, Mr. David Williams, Labour, who sat for 10 years, holds this seat for Labour. The 1951 Labour majority, 24,129. Here is another Welsh result from Berwethdy in Monmouthshire. Here, the sitting member, Mr. Harold Finch, Labour, who sat for 5 years, holds the seat for Labour. The 1951 Labour majority in Berwethdy was 25,243. We go straight on. North Wales, the tip there, Anglesey, the sitting member...
Hughes.
Hughes and Hughes. It's like a firm of lawyers. The sitting member, Mr. Cledwyn Hughes, the Labour candidate, that's the first Hughes of the three you see there, has sat for 4 years, and he has held the seat for Labour. The majority was small in 1951. It was only 595, David.
Yes, the Conservative there forfeits his deposit, and so does the Welsh Nationalist. And the Labour majority goes up very considerably.
To Yorkshire now, to Pontefract. There we have the sitting Labour member, Mr. George Sylvester, who sat for 5 years and 3 years before that for Normanton, holding the seat for Labour. The 1951 Labour majority was 24,237.
A slight swing to Labour in proportion of votes.
Straight on to Pontypridd in Glamorgan. where, once again, a sitting Labour member, Mr. Arthur Pearson, several times Labour whip and treasurer of the household, who sat for 17 years, holds the seat for Labour. The 1951 Labour majority in Pontypridd, 20,075. To Scotland, to Fife East. East Fife, where the sitting member, Mr. Henderson Stewart, Liberal and Conservative, and Under-Secretary at the Scottish Office, Junior Minister, holds the seat which he's held for 22 years.
Each party having exactly the same share of the vote as in 1951.
And on again to Basingstoke, near London now, a major redistribution here on the retirement of Squadron Leader Patrick Donner, the Conservative candidate, and in his place, Mr. Freeth, the new Conservative candidate, holds the seat for the Conservatives.
77% turnout in Basingstoke.
Results from Hemsworth in Yorkshire. There was a major redistribution here. The sitting member, Mr. Horace Holmes, who sat for 9 years, and at the last 2 elections, I believe, has had the largest majority.
And he's got it again this time.
Has got it again, so there's a hat trick in the largest majorities. That's something for a man to remember. He holds the seat for Labour. Derbyshire West, West Derbyshire. The sitting member, Mr. Edward Wakefield, Conservative, and Assistant Conservative Whip, holds the seat for the Conservatives. The 1951 Conservative majority was 6,645.
A 1% swing to the Conservatives.
To Gloucester, to West Gloucester. Here, the sitting member, Mr. Phillips Price, 22 years in the House, holds the seat for Labour, the 1951 Labour majority. This covers, by the way, a lot of the Forest of Dean, this constituency, was 6,679.
3% swing for the Conservatives there.
Kingston upon Hull West, a newly made seat. Here, the Labour candidate, Mr. Mark Hewitson, who sat for Hull Central for 10 years, has taken the seat for Labour. Further results, I think, are on their way, and we'll see, just for 1 second, the House of Commons situation, Terry.
Yes, well, there you see the Conservatives' absolute majority has now carried over to 5, I think. In 5 seats are occupied on the other side, on the Labour side. The white squares have spilled over to the extent of 5 seats onto the other side. That means that 320 seats are in the hands of the Conservatives, which in turn means they've got 5 more seats than the necessary total required for an absolute majority.
And now we'll look at the party totals, which are to date.
Yes, I haven't done my arithmetic yet, but I think let's see.
52 seats still to come, and no change on the gains and losses. We've had hardly any as the day has gone on.
From Wales, from Glamorgan Ogmore. The sitting member, Mr. Walter Padley, holds the seat for Labour. He is a very prominent member, the national president, in fact, of the Union of Shop and Distributive and Allied Workers, known as USDOR. And here the Labour majority in 1951 was 27,518.
A swing to the Conservatives there, although a bigger one, a 3% swing to the Conservatives.
It's perhaps just worth saying in relation to those Norfolk seats that David's been talking about, there is, I think, possibly an historical reason which is partly explains the extremely delicate balance in North Norfolk, and that is the deep-rooted liberalism of the area, which is perhaps more profound than in many other areas and leaves a lot of divided allegiance.
Do you agree, Butler?
Yes, it does seem to me to be the one area where there's been a swing to Labour in the region. We've been checking on detailed regions, and there was a swing to Labour in these East Anglian seats of nearly 1%. Everywhere else there's a small swing to the Conservatives.
And now we're going to pay a visit out across London again. No, we're going to give you a result first, which came in on top of our visit outside Honiton, Devon. Here, the Mr. Robert Matthew, the Conservative member who succeeded the retiring member, Mr. Cedric Drew, has held the seat for the Conservatives. In 1951, Conservative majority was 17,157.
And the Liberal did well there. He moved up to second in the poll. No, sorry, he was second before. He increased his poll by 3%. On the whole, the Liberals have done fairly well in the West Country, except to that result we had a little way back of North Dorset.
Now, from our studio in London, we go across London to Labour Party headquarters at Transport House.
For the past 3/4 of an hour, I've been here at the headquarters of the losing army. Naturally enough, there aren't any flags flying and not really very much elation. the other hand, I wouldn't say, from what I've seen and the people I've talked to, there's anything resembling despair. I suspect, indeed, that for the last stages of the campaign, there was an undertow of doubt about the outcome as far as Labour was concerned. And there's been nothing resembling surprise here at the Labour headquarters as a result of what's happened. On the other hand, I think you might like to hear from a trade unionist. As you know, Transport House is the headquarters not only of the Labour Party itself, but of the Trade Union Congress. And a member of the General Council of the Trade Union Congress has agreed now to be interviewed, Mr. Tom Williamson, himself a former Member of Parliament and General Secretary of the General Municipal Workers Union. Well, Mr. Williamson, speaking as a trade unionist, how do you think this result is going to be received, that is the triumph of the Conservative Party?
Well, we're in a democratic system, and of course we've always got to be prepared to accept a change of government.
Do you feel that the unions will be happy to work with the Conservative government in the period that lies ahead?
Well, I wouldn't say that, of course, they'll be happy to work with the government. I'm perfectly certain they will.
Now, what about your relationship with the Labour Party in recent times? It's been said by your Conservative opponents that the satisfaction of the ordinary working people with things as they are now accounts for the Conservative victory. Do you agree?
No, I don't agree. I think there are a number of circumstances. I think the Conservative Party have been very fortunate in having the economic state of the country on their side in this election. And it may well be that the difficulties that we know have been happening within the Labour Party may have had some little effect, but I think it's very minor and very small.
Do you think there will be any tendency, looking ahead now, for trade unions to drift away from their allegiance to the Labour Party?
No, not at all. No, I don't think so. I think the trade unions will always regard the Labour Party as the political side of the great Labour movement.
And looking ahead still further into the new Parliament, do you expect that the Labour Party will be in any series of difficulties because of its internal differences that we saw recently?
I hope not.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Williamson. Returning you now to Richard Dimbleby in the studio.
I think I should have said when we went over there, you know, that our old friend Bob Mackenzie isn't with us now because he just happens at the moment to be working at the other end, but we've not lost his services for all that. Another result is in, and here it is. It's Rye in East Sussex. It's one of the newly made seats, and the Conservative candidate, Mr. Godman Irvine, a barrister and farmer, has captured it for the Conservatives. I see now that they're ready to receive us back in Oxford, where we've not been for some time. Let me remind you that there, Herbert Nicholas and Alan Bullock, two historians, have been watching all that's been happening, and happening so busily in the last 2 hours. They've probably had some time in the peace of Herbert Nicholas's room there to digest what's been going on. Anyway, we hope so. And to hear from them now, we take you from London over to Herbert Nicholas's room at New College, Oxford.
Well, good afternoon. I think what struck me so far in this election here, but has been the increasing gap between the percentage of the votes gained by the parties. The last election in 1951, the Conservatives actually had a smaller percentage of the vote than Labour.
Yes.
Although they had
formed a government.
This time, they've got a much larger percentage. As far as I've seen, the last figures were 51% for Conservative of the vote and 46% for Labour. But the gap between the number of seats doesn't appear nearly as large as one might have expected. Now, how do you account for that?
Well, I suppose one thing that's happened is that this picture which we started off with last night of absolute uniformity throughout the country, or the impression we carried away with us when we went to bed, is really been in some degree altered by the events of today. There's been more local variation than we expected. The East Anglian result, which David Butler was mentioning, where there was a swing towards Labour throughout the whole region, and where Dye carried his seat that he lost before, that I think is an indication that perhaps the pattern is a little more broken up.
And some of the marginal seats, which Labour might have been expected to lose, in fact they got out their people, perhaps because it was a marginal seat, and managed to check the possible loss which might have occurred.
This raises the question, doesn't it, of whether personalities whom we've been playing down all the time, saying they don't matter, whether in some way they've been coming into their own a little in this election.
Well, I hope so, and I think everybody would hope so. But one remembers the agency said they weren't worth 500 votes.
Exactly.
That doesn't seem to be true.
Well, when you look at the way in which it may be particularly true of Liberals, but I couldn't help noticing that where two very well-known and popular Liberal personalities had stood down, Dinglefoot and Kendall, that the Liberal vote had slumped. Where a popular Liberal personality had returned to the electorate, to the election and to campaigning, as Frank Owen in Hereford, it had gone up. And you could parallel this by the marginal Labour seats that Labour succeeded in holding.
Yes. Well, now let's switch to another thing. I wonder what the reaction to this is being abroad. I remember last night we were listening to Alistair Cook. He said how struck he was by the fact that so little notice had been taken of foreign policy in the election. Well, I think that's true, and as far as the campaign went, it was not an issue. Perhaps the decision to invite Russia to four-power talks immediately before took it out of the election. But on the other hand, I think it is true that if foreign policy wasn't a great issue in the election, the effect of this election abroad is very important. How do you think, well, now, what will be the effect in the United States?
Well, I think that although foreign policy wasn't an issue, the parties didn't terribly disagree about it, yet certain themes were stressed by both parties.
Yeah.
Peace, four-power talks.
Yeah.
And I should think that in the United States in particular, of course, they'll feel that a Conservative victory is an endorsement of the policy that Eden has been pursuing. They probably didn't realize how little a difference was between the two parties.
They seem to have made bogies out of the Labour
Yes, exactly. But certainly this will have the effect of making them feel that there's nothing to worry about, that British policy is going to pursue the same lines as it has been hitherto.
In other words, the result's likely to consolidate the alliance.
Certainly.
Well,
isn't this so on the continent?
I should have thought so,
Yes.
and I should have thought once again it makes an impression of British stability, the stable picture of the electorate as a whole, no sort of violent swing one way or the other. Well, that's all we've time for now. Back to Richard Dimbleby in the studio.
Well, there is waiting here in the studio a result, which we may see, I think, at once. Hexham in Northumberland. There, the sitting member, Mr. Rupert Spear, Conservative, holds the seat for the Conservatives. The 1951 Conservative majority was 7,499.
And there's rather a big swing there for the Conservatives, 4%.
Yes. Another result in now from Rhondda East. Here, the sitting member, Mr. William Mannering, who sat for 22 years, a former miner and miner's agent, holds the seat for Labour. The 1951 Labour majority in Rhondda East was 24,436. There's a communist candidate here.
Who goes up from third to second place, and who saves his deposit. Goes up from 8% of the vote to 15% of the vote in Rhondda.
Her deposit, yes.
Her deposit, sorry, Mrs.
Now,
Howell.
from London we go out. We have news that, with luck, if we go to West Wales now, by magic, we may be able to hear the story told by a miner about how the results of the election have been heard and assimilated somewhere in the pits. So let's go from London over to Cross Hands in West Wales.
And here in West Wales, we're rather lagging behind the rest of the country because in Cross Hands, we're on the border between two constituencies, Llanelli and Carmarthen, and neither of those results has as yet come in, but we're waiting for them. Now, of course, we have here a combination of agriculture and industry, mainly agricultural in Carmarthen, where Sir Rhys Hopkins Morris is the sitting Liberal member, and mainly industrial in Llanelli. But I'd like you to meet someone who is typical, I think, of the industrial side, rather unfortunately typical in one way, Mr. Sidney Jones. He's a miner and hasn't worked since 1937 because of silicosis. Well, Mr. Jones, you voted, I take it, Labour?
Yes.
And what do you think Mr. James Griffith's chances are?
Oh, I am undoubtedly he's in.
Yes.
There's no question about it.
Well, as a sideline, Mr. Jones, how does the miner find out how things are going up top when he's down below?
Oh, they're very interested because they mark the trams, you see, and they let them know as things come in. The radio, most likely, or in the canteens, and they're able to chalk the trams, and on now, of course, with the latest types, they've got phones, you see, and so on.
But they do still chalk on the side of the trams that carry the coal how the results are going?
Oh, most likely.
And, of course, I take it the mining vote here is largely Labour?
Oh, in the main.
Do you find that the young miners coming up are as interested in politics as they used to be in when you were a young miner yourself?
No, I wouldn't say that.
No?
By any means, no.
And you think that's a pity?
It is a pity. Yes.
But quite apart from that, they still go on mining what they tell me is the best anthracite coal in the world.
Oh, there's no question about it. It is.
Yes. And apart from having the best coal in the world, of course, they are fairly confident that Mr. James Griffiths will be returned. It is a safe seat. Of course, the other interesting one, as you've heard, is the one just next door. The border between the two constituencies actually runs halfway through the chapel and halfway through the pub, which is the sort of thing that very often happens down here. Well, there it is. We're still waiting for our 2 results and 7 more in Wales. Thank you very much, Mr. Jones, for coming along. And, well, we expect your member will be returned. Of course, nobody can prophesy definitely, but I'm sure you'll be very disappointed if he isn't.
Oh, easy.
But how do you feel about the Conservatives having been returned as a Labour man all your life?
Oh, well, I'm not happy at all, because I haven't found them being too kind to us, you see, especially to the miners, especially men like myself, who are suffering from silicosis. They haven't been very kind to us, and I hope that now that they're in, that they'll certainly treat us as they ought to.
Well, let's hope that's been noted by those concerned.
Okay.
Well, that's all for the moment from West Wales. We'll still stay here waiting for the results to come in the meantime. Back to you, Richard Dimbleby, in London.
Well, there's some news. We're going to pay a call. Are we ready to? Yes, we are. We're going to pay a call across London to Conservative headquarters at Abbey House, where we shall find William Clark, who is going to talk to Lord Woolton. So we go now.
Well, here we are in the Victorious headquarters, and I have with me Lord Woolton, the chairman of the Victorious Party organisation. Lord Woolton, do you feel fairly pleased with how things have gone?
Well, I think I should be very ungrateful if I didn't. They have gone a little better than we expected. We're very pleased with the result. For this particular reason, you know, you very often heard it said, I'm sure, that the Labour Party had the votes and we had the seats.
Yes.
Well, I can't say that anymore, because now we've got both the votes and the seats, and that is very gratifying. That is as it ought to be.
Prime Minister said something about the young vote of this country. Do you think that that has swung to Conservatism now?
Oh, but I do. I do. And we've gone to a great deal of trouble about this, you know. For the last, several years, it's taken a long time, we've been organising the young Conservative movement right throughout the country, and it's been very interesting. We've got it in the universities, we've got it in the factories. It's very encouraging, and to think that those people, the younger people, are now supporting us really gives us great encouragement.
We heard from Transport House that you had, of course, a large organisation here with a good deal of paid labour. Do you think that that is the basis of your success?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. I don't know why they said that. Of course, you can't run political parties without having professional and expert advice. The great majority of our helpers are not paid at all. The great majority of our officers here are not paid. Perhaps you might say, well, some of you are very fortunate. You are able to do without it. Well, that is true, and we are fortunate. We've got a paid staff here, but believe me, we haven't got victory because we've been able to buy it in any sense. We've got it because we've had an enormous number of voluntary workers all throughout the country, and they've had a faith in Conservatism. They believe in us, and we show them that they were right to believe in us.
And there was a phrase, too, about return to traditional Toryism. What's your view on that?
Oh, well, you know, you've got to say things like this when you're in party politics. But there is no sign of going back to the backwoodsman or whatever they mean by traditional Toryism. I heard Mr. Morgan Phillips say it. I didn't think he said it in any flattering sort of way about traditional Toryism, you know. What we are going in for now is progressive government. The reason why people have voted for us, and the young people in particular have voted for us this time, is because they see for themselves the chance to get on. They see the opportunities for progress. They see that they've had stable employment. They see that they're better off than they've ever been before. And that is, after all, what all of us want. and particularly it's what people want when they're young.
Well then, as a last question, what do you think the election results give you a mandate for? Just the mixture as before?
Continuation, stable government. I'm sure of this. And did you notice the Prime Minister said it today? I'm sure that they don't want class hatred. You know, it isn't English. It isn't British. We don't hate one another. And this idea that there is a class cleavage in this country, I think is something that is foreign to British temperament. We've just got all to work along together, and by that means we'll bring great prosperity to this nation, and it deserves it.
Well, with those benevolent words, which I think you were speaking, I will turn us back again now to Richard Dimbleby in the studio.
Well, we've heard now from Lord Woolton, and we're going now to hear from a very prominent member of the Liberal Party. I've just heard that Frank Gillard in Bristol has with him Mr. Frank Byers, a former Liberal Chief Whip. So let's go now from London over to Bristol.
Association. That's right, isn't it? That's right. Your present status. What have you been doing during the election then?
Well, my wife and I have completed about 2,500 miles all around the country, but mostly in the West Country, in Wiltshire, Somerset, Dorset, Devon and Cornwall, and then up to North Wales. And we've taken in a few other constituencies like Epping and Walthamstow, and so on.
You've seen quite a bit of it.
Oh, we've seen quite a bit of it.
I know it's pretty self-sacrificing of a man who's standing down as a candidate to run himself into the ground like this.
Well, I think it's been a very interesting experience. It certainly has given me a much wider view of what happens in an election, because all elections up to now I've been fighting in one constituency.
Yes, indeed. Well, what about this celebrated apathy and so on? You come across it?
We saw none of it at all. In fact, we had the most enthusiastic and extremely large meetings in Barnstaple on the eve of the poll. We had about 900 people inside the hall and about 500 outside.
Your North Devon result was pretty good, of course.
Very good indeed.
Yes. Well, now, that's what I want to ask you, the $64 question, really. What do you, as a Liberal, a leading Liberal, feel about the Liberal vote in this election?
Well, I'm obviously naturally disappointed that we haven't got more members of Parliament. I think we had every hope that we would. But I am tremendously encouraged by the fact that in quite a number of the constituencies, the vote has shown a remarkable increase. And in some constituencies, as you've seen, we've now come up to second place, a good second, and Labour is at the bottom of the poll. And this is about the first time in my lifetime that I can remember when we've had this encouraging turning point. And I believe we've got a foundation now in a lot of constituencies from which we can build up real strength to go forward.
I see. You feel, in fact, that this election has been a stride forward on your declared path, towards your objective, in fact, of becoming the major alternative party?
Oh, I'm absolutely sure of that. And I think the fact that the votes have gone up in a number of these constituencies will encourage a lot of these other people, these I am a Liberal but, to come in next time and throw in their lot with the Liberal Party.
You see the Liberal Party putting more candidates in next time, do you?
I do. I certainly hope we shall.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, now, and the other thing I would like to ask you is, what do you, as a Liberal, feel about the way in which feel about the general outcome of the election?
Well, I think it would have been a far better House of Commons, if I may say so, if there'd been 12 less Conservatives and 12 more Liberals.
Yes.
But on the whole, I think it's a wise decision. I think the country has come to a good decision. A majority, round about 60, if that's what it's going to turn out, will be quite a comfortable one for the government, but not so comfortable that they can sit back on the job. And I think the country would have been very unwise, and I think they've seen it, to have entrusted the government of the country to a disunited and divided Labour Party at this particular moment. But as you know, we were fighting to try and get better representation, stronger representation for the Liberal Party. And I feel, to that extent, that the House of Commons is not nearly as good as it should be.
Yes, well, it's a very natural answer. One last thing. Do you feel that any major issue has itself arisen out of the election?
Well, I should say that the major issue which has arisen as a result of the election,
That's what I mean.
now we know the result,
That's what I mean.
is the future of the Labour Party. Because, quite frankly, I think that if that party is going to remain as the official opposition, and I don't see it doing so, but if it is, it's got to do a great deal of fresh thinking. It's got to get unity. It's got to have, I think, a policy which does not include all this nationalization and controls, and I think they've got to bring a good deal of business experience into their academic economics. And until they do that, I don't see them getting back into power. In fact, I hope they don't until they've got a proper policy. And it may well be that this is the beginning of the Liberal Party transplanting the Socialist Party as the official opposition. I don't know. It's an interesting speculation.
Yes.
I'm young enough to watch it.
Yes. Any last thoughts, final words before we hand back?
No, I don't think so. I think it's been an extremely interesting election, and I feel that we have picked up a lot of Liberal votes that we haven't perhaps had before, and quite a number from Labour. But of course we've got to do a lot of analysis to see whether we have in fact maintained our position, which I understand we have, vis-a-vis 1951, but there's a great deal of work to be done even now.
Well, thanks very much. So this election gives the Liberal Party some cause for optimism and cheerfulness. Thank you very much, Frank Byers. And now back once again to Richard Dimbleby.
We have two results waiting here to give you. First of all, Colne Valley, West Yorkshire. Now here, there has been a major redistribution, and the sitting member, Mr. Glenville Hall, a member incidentally of what's generally called the Labour Shadow Cabinet, who has sat for many years in the House, was 5 years Financial Secretary to the Treasury and a delegate to the United Nations Assembly. Mr. Glenville Hall has held the seat for Labour.
That's interesting for the fact that Mr. Glenville Hall did rather better. Admittedly, there were boundary changes against a Conservative opponent this time than he did last time when he fought Lady Violet Bonham Carter, with the Conservatives standing down and supporting Lady Violet. But I think he has another result coming up.
Yes, this is from Wales, Brecon and Radnor. Here, again, the sitting member, Mr. Tudor Watkins, Labour, he sat for 10 years and he holds the seat for Labour. In 1951, the Labour majority was 2,083.
There are two quite remarkable things about that result I'd like to comment on. Firstly, that's the biggest swing to Labour there's been any result so far. The Labour share of the poll was up 6%. And the other thing is the quite fantastic turnout in Brecon and Radnor. It's the largest constituency in land area south of the Scottish border, I believe, certainly south of those large constituencies up in Richmond, North Yorkshire. It's a very large and straggling thing, a little mining fringe along the south, and then just hill farmers. Well, no fewer than 87%, 86.7% of the electorate of Brecon and Radnor voted. I think it's the highest poll we've had recorded in the whole night. It is the highest, isn't it, Robin?
I think so.
It is the highest poll recorded so far. It is a quite extraordinary achievement when the poll has been dropping all over the rest of the country that it only dropped about 3% there, and still you've got almost 87% of the people voting in must be one of the most difficult seats in the country to fight. But here's another result.
Here it is. There are two more, in fact. The first one is Bolsover, your Bolsover in Derbyshire. This seat is kept by Labour. Mr. Harold Neal is the sitting member. He sat in the House for 11 years. He used to be a coal miner. There are a lot of coal mines and limestone quarries in this area. In 1951, the Labour majority in Bolsover was 25,189. And then after it, we go to Wales, a result for which I believe you were waiting, David. Carmarthen, a minor redistribution. And here, Cerise Hopkin Morris, the sitting member, Liberal of course, has sat for 10 years and holds the seat for the Liberal Party. He, incidentally, was Deputy Chairman of Ways and Means. That means a Deputy Speaker of the House.
These results are very interesting, these last three we've had in, because four we've had in, they eliminate 3 of the 7 marginal seats where the result was a bit in doubt. We didn't know about Carmarthenshire. There was only a majority of 467 last time. Brecon and Radnor was a relatively marginal seat. There was a big swing to Labour, and I think it's almost ceased to be a marginal seat. And then there was Colne Valley. It was only a 2,000 majority. So we've only got about 4 possible doubtful seats to come in.
Now we're going now to pay another visit out. Not out of town, though, because we stay in town. We're going to Bush House. Over there, Brian Connell, who's been doing all our interviewing there today, last night, has with him, I believe, 3 journalists. We've heard some foreign journalists talking about the election. Now we come to some of our own, giving their points of view. He has with him H.V. Hodson, the editor of the Sunday Times, John Bevan of the Manchester Guardian, and Sidney Jacobson of the Daily Mirror. So we go now over to Bush House.
And now, in contrast to the comments of foreign press representatives that you've been hearing from Bush House, here is our first opportunity to hear the reactions of representatives of the organs of public opinion in this country to the result of the election. We have Sidney Jacobson, political editor of the Daily Mirror, John Bevan, London correspondent of the Manchester Guardian, and H.V. Hodson, the editor of the Sunday Times. Sidney Jacobson, I'd like to ask you first, the Daily Mirror has been very forthright in its support of the Labour Party. What comment would you make now that the result has been announced?
Well, the Daily Mirror urged its readers to vote Labour, but it recognised that the Tories might win, and it said keep the Tory majority down as low as possible, and on that basis we're not surprised and perhaps not unhappy, not surprised anyway at the result. Now the election is over, I think that what the Daily Mirror will want to do is to know why Labour lost the election, and we would like to examine the defects perhaps in the leadership of the Labour Party, the cost of the internal feuds in the Labour Party, the cost of the great Bevanite controversy, and we would like to know why the Labour Party machinery, in our opinion, was so inadequate and so inferior to the very skillful and slick organisation of the Tory Party.
John Bevan, I thought I saw you nodding agreement to an argument there.
Yes, it's not only the Daily Mirror that will want to have an inquiry, but I think the Labour Party will want to have an inquiry too. Now, Labour's done rather better, I think, that quite a lot of its supporters expected it to do. And it's done particularly well in the marginal constituencies, but it's not done so well in the average constituency. And I think that there was a defect in morale. I think that the trouble is not only the feuds there have been in the parties, but that Labour no longer fears the Tories as it used to. I don't think anybody can really fear Sir Anthony Eden. And Conservatism has worn a new face during the past few years, and it has taken the sting out of the Labour attack. One thing I'm glad of, and that is that the statisticians seem to have proved wrong in most of their predictions, or in many of them.
H.V. Hodson, I think it's no breach of security to say that your sympathies are with the winning side in this election. Would you like to enlarge on your reactions to the result?
Well, I'm not only happy myself about the result, but I think you can say that we're lucky to be in a happy country. Because if you look at the results as a whole, you could call this a no-change election. Not that there hasn't been any change in the figures overall, but that the voting has been clearly and deliberately in favour of keeping the government in power. Now, that's a thing that very rarely happens in this country. Very rarely happens indeed. It's been heard over and over again. It's the first time in this century that a government's ever increased its majority, which shows that the majority of people are happy in the government that they have, and I think they'll continue to be so. Of course, the size of the majority is important. I'm inclined to think that the Conservative Party is going to end this election with a majority that's going to be just about right. Not too large so as to expose it to faction within itself, and not so small as to fail to give the confidence and security that the government needs both at home and abroad in dealing with the four-power situation and other problems abroad, and with the strikes and other difficulties at home. That, after all, is a very satisfactory result, this vote of confidence in the government.
Sidney Jacobson, I saw you forming another comment there.
Hodson said that the government has increased its majority and that this is a very rare thing to happen, but of course it's increased its majority on a poll which is, generally speaking, a great deal lower than the poll in the last election. I think one of the things one will have to try and find out is why fewer people went and voted this time than they did in 1951. I think that's the most important point.
Is there any comment affecting Lancashire which comes to mind, John Bevan?
No, the results are pretty much what I myself expected them to be in Lancashire. But what I'm wondering is why Labour didn't get its vote out better. I wonder if Hodson has any theories on that.
Well, I think this is not merely a question of an organisation, it's a question of the policy with which the Labour Party goes to the country. The Labour Party got its majority in 1945, as it did, or got its big gain in 1929, because it was offering the people something that they thought was going to cure evils that they saw. Now, it has nothing fresh, it's had nothing fresh to offer, and only its strong adherents are enthusiastic about its policy. There's no enthusiasm behind it at all.
unless there are any more pertinent comments, where we must, I think, go back. And with that first British press reaction to the election result, thank you Sidney Jacobson, John Bevan and H.V. Hodgson, and back to Richard Dimbleby in the studio.
Opinion on the whole situation as it is as of this moment.
Well, I think the first thing to do is to look at the result so far in terms of seats. We'd like to look at the party totals and see what has happened. Here you see the Conservatives 339 seats. Well, I think that when the final results are in, there are 4 more seats that are likely to go to the Conservatives and 2 doubtful ones they might conceivably get. They'll probably have, well, let me be quite safe and cautious in this final thing, they'll have between 342 and 345 seats in the next Parliament. The Labour Party should have, I think, 2 more seats on results still to come in. The Liberals, if they hold Orkney and Shetland, as one might assume they will, should have 6 seats. And then there are these 2 doubtful seats in Northern Ireland, Mid-Ulster and Fermanagh and Tyrone, which might go into the others column. And then there's this one other seat, the Speaker, which isn't listed here because the Speaker is in some ways a different sort of member from all the others.
Now I'm going to interrupt you just for one moment, David, because I believe that our last trip outside has materialized. I didn't think it was going to. I may in a moment receive the signal. We can pay one last trip, here it is, down to Wales, just a quick one, and then we'll be back to round off our programme. So let us go from London down to meet Howell Davis of Cross Hands in West Wales. He has with him, I believe, a man who, a Liberal candidate who's been very successful in a marginal seat, Sir Rhys Hopkin Morris. So over we go to Cross Hands.
One of the fights that attracted most attention here in Wales was the one in Carmarthenshire, where the Liberal Sir Rhys Hopkin Morris, Deputy Chairman of Ways and Means, held his seat in a 3-cornered fight against a Labour candidate and a Welsh Nationalist candidate. Now, his majority in the last general election was 467. This time it was 3,333. And Sir Rhys Hopkin Morris has arrived here in Cross Hands, somewhat breathless, by car from Carmarthen. I should like to ask you, Sir Rhys, what your comments are on this increased majority.
Well, at short notice, it is very difficult to express any opinion except one, and that one is really decisive. The wholehearted support of all the lovers of freedom and liberty, to whatever party they belonged, and the hard work that they put in to achieve the result, hard work of every kind, and that throughout the length and breadth of the division. And when I talk of the length and breadth of the division, I mean length and breadth in this particular division. Those who were from the old to the young, they worked with a will and with full energy right throughout the contest. That is what accounts. And the beliefs that were behind them, the beliefs that urged them to their activity, those were formed the secret of the success of this election.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, with my apologies, I'll allow you to recover your breath and return once again to the seat that you held for the Liberal Party in Carmarthen. And we'll return you from Cross Hands to Richard Dimbleby in the London studio.
Well, now we've paid our last journey outside, and we really do come towards the end of it all. And I'm going to ask David Butler to take up the story where he laid it down a moment ago. Now to come, David, I think to the question of time and voting, eh?
Yes, well, I think it would be interesting at the end not to tie any clever fancy work with statistics, although I know that Robin Farquharson and those beside me could produce some brilliant and dazzling figures which would thoroughly confuse you, as possibly we've confused you earlier in the evening. I think it'd be interesting to see just how the results flowed in during this wonderful, strenuous 20 hours. I don't say wonderful in terms of the result, by the way. I just say because it's exciting listening to results. It's what I personally happen to find the most enjoyable thing in the world. On this, we'd like to see the results by time as they came in this general election of 1951. you see it was extremely close. All through the night, not more than 2 or 3 results different between the two parties. The Labour Party ended up actually, I think, 3 seats ahead at 4 o'clock. You see that light band for the period between 4 and 10 when we had no results. Then when the morning came in, they stayed together for the few results that came in between 10 and 12. And then suddenly the Conservatives leapt ahead to their lead of about 60 now.
David, you said inadvertently 51. You're really talking of 55.
These were the results by time in 1955. We did have a gadget earlier which was trying to help you by showing how the results came in last time. But this particular gadget that we just showed you was the pattern of results this time. Labour 3 ahead on the night, the Conservatives, as the county constituencies came in, pushing right ahead to their majority now of 60-odd seats.
Now, Terry Thompson, our parliamentary correspondent, please, will you take up the story in our last roundup?
Yes, well, before I do anything else, I'd just like to say a word to 1 or 2 or more viewers who've rung up to remark that certain names which they felt ought to have been on it were omitted from our board, our list of prominent members who are in and out. This is only by way of explanation, but I know a lot of importance is attached to these things, and I want just to say that that board is strict. I'm not going to bring it up because it will take time, but that board is strictly limited in size, and we had to go on a strictly limited choice of members to put on it. I won't go into the details, but the omissions, whatever they were quite inevitable, and regrettable but inevitable, and I can't say more about them than that. Now, I'm not going to say very much about the election as a whole. It's too big, frankly, I find it too big a phenomenon at this moment, above all, to attempt to assess in simplified terms. All I'm going to say about the election as a whole, speaking as a parliamentary journalist who sat here and watched the results come in over this period, that I still feel that this whole picture wants a great deal of study before we can see to the bottom of all the trends in it. It's clear that the general picture is clear enough that the battle of the turnout, as it's called, went against the Labour Party. They didn't get their vote out, and the Conservatives did. But I'm still I'm still very much intrigued, shall I say, by a lot of what I would regard as cross-currents in this. And I won't say more than that. I mean, for instance, to mention only one thing, the results in the Medway towns, where Labour seats, marginal Labour seats, seem to me to have been retained quite against the run of the play. Then there's the whole position of the Liberal Party and so on, which I've no doubt fascinating conclusions will be reached on by David Butler in some book which he'll write in the future. Now, leaving then coming very briefly and finally down to the brass tacks of the new House of Commons, I would like to bring up the diagram. There it is, and I would I would only say one thing. You see there the white squares spilling over into that's the white Conservative part of the House, spilling over into the other half, and that bar at the bottom on the left represents diagrammatically the Conservative majority. Now, obviously, somebody's got to finish up with some sort of majority in a general election. And the question of the desirability of it from the point of view of one party or another is no concern of mine. But I would just like to say this. I've said it before in the course of the day, but I think it is worth making again, finally, that there is a great deal of practical significance in the return to something which looks much more like what used to be called a working majority. I shall always remember when Labour came back in 1950 with 6, and after they'd had 150. And it was a new experience for British democracy, that. Nobody knew how on earth that was going to work out. Well, it went on much longer than anybody thought possible. And then, of course, as you know, in 51, the Conservatives came back without any very greatly enhanced majority on their side. And all that time, all through these years, the House of Commons has been working on these terribly narrow margins, and it's a great strain on all concerned, particularly on the members, quite irrespective of party considerations. I think most members would admit this. And if we're going to have a House of Commons which has got 60, one way or the other, well, it may be very bad news to some and very good news to others, but I think, at any rate, from a practical point of view, it's going to make a great easement, in many respects, to the working of the House of Commons.
And now to Bob Mackenzie for his summing up, please.
Just a final word, and I'd like to say something about party totals, just one last look at the party total board, because I think much of the story is to be seen in this set of figures. At least the total votes, if we could have that one, please, just finally. The point about it is, we've been saying again and again, it's been the battle of the turnout. Now, if you look at the votes for the Conservative Party, you'll see just over 13 million, going on for 13,200,000. They'll probably go over that mark. In the last election, the Conservatives got 13,700,000. In other words, their vote will have fallen by about 500,000 in this election as against the last election. The Labour Party is down to 12,300,000. In the last election, they got 13,900,000. They're down 1.5 million. In other words, the Conservatives are down 500,000, Labour's down 1.5 million in total votes, rounding it off. That is the story of this election. It's told in the failure of the Labour Party to poll its proportion of its vote, the success of the Conservatives in getting a larger proportion of theirs out. The battle of the turnout is the phrase that's been used again and again. I'm sure that's exactly what this was. Of course, abstentions, in a sense, are endorsation of things as they are, and the government has every right to take credit for the fact that not very many people felt strongly enough to go and switch the thing against them. That's all for now, Richard.
Thank you, Bob, very much. Well, it is just left now for me to really to give a final summing up, and that's not going to be quite the same as the summing up given by the experts. One fact from all this, to me as the perennial layman, there is a Conservative government. It has a majority of at least 50, and that figure is capable of change for the rest of today and also to some extent tomorrow. That much we know. I've been making a little calculation on a piece of paper, and I find that it was just 17 hours ago that we first came and sat down here and said, good evening, we're going to tell you about the general election. We're more or less stuck in our chairs in the studio. I won't pretend it's been easy, but we've enjoyed it, and I hope in some way that you've enjoyed it too. I want to say, like a chairman of a successful meeting, if it's been successful, a great thank you to all the people that you haven't seen who are in this room behind the scenes, because they've worked jolly hard. Now that's all. 17 hours with a couple of hours break. We hope, all of us, I know, that we have succeeded in performing some sort of a duty here which has been a public service for you. Now, we're going to suspend operations so the children can enjoy their television at 5 o'clock, which is just a minute from now. We'll be back at 6 with just a brief review, and then we have a very special program at 7:45 this evening. So if you remember those times, we bring to an end this marathon run after some 17 hours with a very simple and easy word. Goodbye.